The Buffalo Bills got their preseason started over the weekend with a 29-14 win over the Carolina Panthers. And next up, it is a trip to Cleveland versus the Browns on Saturday at 1 p.m. No media at practice today for the Bills. And then later on this week, the Bills, they're going to be in Cleveland for a number of joint practices. But for more on the game over the weekend, Sal Capaccio does have a piece up at our website, WGR550.com. And do stay tuned. We'll touch base with Sal a little bit later on today at 5. The team, though, did have a small roster move. They've signed linebacker Otis Reese IV and have released fullback Jackson Aker. Former Bills linebacker Von Miller has officially found his new home. It was reported over the weekend and is now official. Miller signs with the Cowboys on a one-year deal worth $5.5 million. And then Jets running back Breece Hall, he suffered a groin strain at practice today. That, according to head coach Aaron Glenn, though Glenn did say he did not believe it would be a big deal. The Sabres made a small trade, sending forward prospect Steven Sardanian to Carolina for future considerations. And then in baseball, off days for the Yankees, Blue Jays, and Bisons. They'll all get back at it tomorrow, but for tonight, just one of our teams in action. That is the Mets. They're hosting the Padres at 7:10. That's Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet with you for the extra mile since 1935. I'm Zach Jones for Western New York's Voice of the Fan, WGR.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
If you wrap foil around that, just like the little bit of the base part of the banana where the fruit is, wrap foil around that top and they will last longer.
You know, I'm something of a scientist myself.
Who needs your bananas to last longer, though?
Look, I don't want to go to the store every other day for bananas.
They're 8 cents each.
What the hell are you talking about? What is going on?
You're going to wrap them in foil?
They're better when they're just a little green. Yeah.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
Too much work.
Not that much trouble, really.
Too much work.
Says the guy that's got a spreadsheet with 3,000 fantasy teams.
On WGR, Sports Radio 550.
Does he actually say every other day? I don't want to have to go to the store every other day to buy bananas. What is going on in that house? Really? They don't last the week? He's buying the green ones. They don't last the week? Without the foil? Is there a substation involved? Now, every time anything happens at all, I feel like there's got to probably be a substation nearby for that to make sense. Well, no Bulldog here to defend himself this week, and that's how I like it when I take shots at him. He is not here to get back at me. The other day when he was here, I mentioned, okay, this is about fantasy spreadsheets, but I mentioned that this year I was drafting teams and naming them for like great pitchers. And it's a sign that you've done too many when you get to, no offense to the guy, he had a fine career. He's not in the Hall of Fame or anything, but Ron Guidry. And I'm like, oh, Bulldog, that 1978, wow. And he, for as quickly as he will tell you how he doesn't really love the Red Sox like he used to. I'll be eager to hear from him next week because he was in Pittsburgh for their last 2 games, I think. It's different. They won 2004, and then it all just sort of changed, and that's always interesting to talk about because of what we think might happen to us if the Bills win someday or the Sabres win someday. Like, will we take the pedal off or take the foot off the pedal, I should say, in our sort of enthusiasm for them if they ever do finally get that one. Anyway, I brought up Guidry in 78, and he was, annoyed. I thought it really cut deep, and I was not expecting that. I thought it was – I felt like, he's in his 60s now, and I feel like I could say anything I want about sports, and he's not going to be, annoyed. But he didn't like that Guidry reference. I'm like, didn't Guidry pitch – I mean, I knew that he had, but didn't he pitch 163? That Bucky Dent – was that the guy, Bucky Dent? Was that the guy? Didn't he pitch that game? And he was just not even looking at me. Did not seem to enjoy that at all. So, good. It's good when you can find something like that. You might need that in a friendship once in a while. Something that works if he ever sort of gets into me. And I'm sure there are ways. I don't think it would be about the Mets, but I'm sure there are ways. So we have our first preseason game Saturday. What did you think? Some of you were at the scrimmage and the game. Some of you would have been only at this game. And I'm really interested in what it was like for those of you that saw it for the first time. We were all seeing a game there for the first time, at least. And I'm here for it. I don't think I need an excuse, but I have one. And that's that it's in terms of the football, it was the preseason opener. So we don't care about anything that happened, right? We don't care about anything that happened in this game. Literally nothing. Nothing is interesting to me at all about it. I watched half of it, maybe even a little more than that. I saw Buechel whenever it was he went in. So by then I was in and out of it. But, I'm just telling you, like I watched all of Josh Allen. I watched Bryce Young. I saw, the game take shape. But then you were never getting me to the second half of that game on TV on a nice day. So I don't know, say what you want. But what did you think first time there, or even second? 803-0550 is the number. I think the only interesting, even like semi-interesting football development of the day is Allen and Moore playing as much as they did, even though it wasn't so much. And you had that, starting with Allen, you had that kind of, I mean this largely as a compliment. Look at his career. This is not, I'm not just sort of waking up to what Josh Allen looks like to watch, but some reckless abandon. The touchdown is one example, even to Coleman on that play. But that's his genius as a player. But watching Jalen Phillips get his hand on him and wondering if an old rival was just going to throw him, like spike him to the turf. It didn't happen. But for a split second there, I thought it was going to. And, I actually spent some time on that in my head, watching the game alone. Like, nobody would condone that. But, man, they're not playing Miami in the preseason, right? When Phillips was on Miami. But just like the opportunity to sort of mess with or even take out a great player changes the entire picture of the league. And so, obviously good for us. And again, that's the kind of thing that everybody would hate on if it were to happen. Like if he were just Phillips, super aggressive with Allen there. He's playing the game and Allen gets rid of the ball and okay, that's the end of it. But that's a guy we've gone back with a little bit. And I thought for a second there, like maybe more was coming. The point isn't what Jalen Phillips could have done. The point is just, well, that was the risk. That's always the risk when you play your starters in the preseason, is that they run an injury risk. And Allen got hit a few times. I'm sure he said that it was good, right? Doesn't he always just tell you whatever the thing is that would come off the best? So I'm sure he would say that, like, yeah, I was happy about it. I don't know. Maybe he didn't. But he hasn't played in the preseason other years. This time he does. Like, I want to play. Okay, well, that's right in line with what's actually going to happen. So, of course, he's going to say that. And I don't know, maybe he did. Football players do like to get that first hit. That's the point, the benefit maybe rather of the first game, as long as you survive it. Now I got DJ Moore on one play waving for the DB to come hit him. Guys. And, then he's got an ankle thing that he's limping around with that I guess wasn't as bad as it might have looked at first, which is, of course, good news for the Bills. I don't know. It's the examples where there is an injury that really put the spotlight on the whole thing. And when it doesn't happen, how much breath do you want to waste, railing against it? Allen wasn't injured. Neither, it seems, was DJ Moore. Like, nobody was. So, okay, well, you got away with it. You can't just every day, every game, waste your life on, why did they have to be out there? They have good reasons, coaches, for putting those guys on the field. I just don't think they're as good as, the downside of it if it were to go wrong. You've got Jeremiah Love in Arizona, who so he's got a high ankle sprain. This is the third overall pick, who's a running back. I know I spent a minute on this on Friday because it had already happened. But you've got the number 3 overall pick, who's a running back, which is in and of itself, I think, kind of insane. And he's out there against Vegas carrying the ball 14 times in the first half. Why? And their coach, new coach, LaFleur, got defensive about it today. I mean, what? How can you blame anybody for questioning that? Of all positions, to have a guy basically play the hell out of him in the first half of the preseason opener running back, what do you need to see here? So he might not play the opener now, Love, for Arizona, which is, that's not a team with, any expectations, at least externally this year, but you have this shiny prize from the draft that I think most people in the data world will tell you was not a great idea, but nobody doubts his talent. And it gives from the real world, if I may differentiate that way, you give a team with fans that don't really have a lot to look forward to, somebody new and exciting, and then he's hurt then in the preseason. No excuse. If any position should be exempt from that kind of, a couple of plays if you have to, but 14 touches and a half? In the Super Bowl, that's a lot. So, I don't know, just that seemed pretty crazy, and they're going to pay for it with Love hurt. And, some of these injuries, by the way, and we got to hope this isn't, DJ Moore, but even our other guys who did not play on Saturday, I'm thinking about the DBs or Skylar Bell, even McGovern, who copped to not being sure if he could make it to week one, like that was reported. What happens, not always, but what happens is I'm thinking about like soft tissue type stuff. Maybe this is Bell. Maybe this is, it certainly is a few of their guys. Ty Johnson, even maybe, like whether it does set you on the wrong path for the year. I know from fantasy and from covering and watching the Bills all these years, maybe this is Hairston a little bit. Maybe this is Josh Palmer in his career, where an injury in camp or in the preseason doesn't have to seem like much because everybody's talking about, the team is talking about how they'll be fine and they'll probably not miss games, whatever it is. But I think some of these times it's obvious that the player goes into the regular season diminished or compromised is a better word for it because of the injury. And, you can't avoid all that. Hairston last year got hurt at Fisher, and that wasn't something that the Bills deserved any blame for. Like, you have to practice, right? I think. Do you? I think you got a rookie who is, especially when it's a rookie, and it was just a fluke thing. But it not only can mess with your season, it can mess with your career if that keeps happening. Needless to say, right? The Jets had a scare today, maybe worse than a scare. Breece Hall, their top running back, takes a pass in the flat and goes down on his own. People got pretty freaked out about that as soon as it was reported. Sounds like what they're saying anyway, at least. And there's always two things, right? There's always what the team says, and then very often it's very different what like other people who might be in the know say too. I'll talk to Dan Leberfeld in an hour or a little bit less on the Jets today with some more of his insight on Breece Hall. But they're talking groin injury. And that could be week one, like that could be a few weeks. And so, good luck to them, I guess, and to him. When I think about Breece Hall, he's excellent. He had, I think it's the night of the Rodgers Achilles injury, the week one Bills-Jets game. And Hall was coming off, if I remember right, a torn ACL from his rookie year. It happened in Denver. And so here was Breece Hall, year two. Aaron Rodgers was new there. And Rodgers goes down almost immediately in the game. And Hall did not, it's the Jets. Of course, this was true. But just kind of a meh kind of season. People saw what they loved about him on tape, but just sort of, it didn't really mean anything. The Jets weren't any good. Rodgers misses the year. He had the longest run of the NFL season that night against the Bills, like 80 Didn't score. Somehow he ran for like 85 yards on a play or somewhere around that and did not score. That was the longest rush of the season. When I think about him, it's not about that. I think about the draft when he and James Cook both came into the NFL. I'm just going to call this up here so I don't get my stuff wrong. Breece Hall. So he's going into his 5th year this year. 2022 draft, picked 36th overall. Early 2nd round. And Cook, can you hear me typing? Cook, the same draft, 63rd overall. Remember, the Bills traded down twice before drafting Cook, which, I love that stuff. And how'd that go? Not bad, right? Cook. When I think about Breece Hall, I think about the pre-draft period when, I'm certainly not alone in this, not even in this room when Bulldog is here, but no to high pick running backs. Just no. I don't want to debate it. I know I don't want to do it. Look at Arizona already. That's not fair. It's a training camp or a preseason injury. Maybe he'll be great. Genty last year. Genty for the Raiders, 1,300 some yards from scrimmage. They were awful. I just don't want to put my team's, most expensive draft capital, far from it, into a running back. I just think it's stupid. So I remember that year, 2022 this is, taking a call from a listener about Breece Hall. And the guy clearly knew who he was talking about. This was the Bills should draft Breece Hall guy. I think maybe the only one I've ever talked to that I knew was that, right? So he self-identified. I am here to tell you guys why I think the Bills should draft Breece Hall. Possibly you remember this because the conversation was pretty spicy and went on for a while. And, what I remember about it was the guy, like he had his stuff down. Like you guys should watch the tape. I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to watch the tape. There's no reason to watch the tape. I don't care. Compare him to Earl Campbell. Has the show ever sounded older? Compare him to LaDainian. I don't care. I don't want him because it's going to cost me a 1st-round pick. Who do the Bills take in that? Is that Elam, actually? Oh, that's funny. The Bills if the Bills had drafted Breece Hall instead of Kyer Elam, is the guy on the radio saying they'd be worse off? No, but just do not spend that kind of draft capital on running backs. He ends up slipping to round 2. No running backs are picked in the 1st round. He's the first one off the board. Hall to the Jets with the 4th pick of the 2nd round. And I never liked the idea of Cook as a player. I never liked that he was never the number 1 running back on his own team. I didn't like him for his size. And people billed him as a good pass catcher. And people that I trust said, he doesn't really show that. He's just sort of stereotypically a good pass catcher. And actually, in his career, for as well as he's done, he hasn't been a good pass catcher in the NFL. So that seems to have borne out. But just, simply put, why draft Breece Hall when you can draft someone later? Wow, what logic? Why do that? And some of that is randomness, and there's a lot, I'm sure, that goes into the person and the position, blocking and different things. Not that Cook has really been that guy either, that go into the stew that I'm never going to even be able to detect or know about. But just, all that kind of information, just don't draft the 1st running back in the draft. And here was this caller saying, well, you obviously haven't watched him. I'm thinking to myself, I'm admitting that. Right, correct. I haven't. I'm not gonna. I don't care. And so where are we 4 years in? Well, by now, they've both gotten their next contract, Cook and Breece Hall. They've both been paid. Breece Hall had that happen this offseason. Cook was last year. Cook has led the league in rushing. He's led the league tied for the league lead in touchdown rushes. Playoffs every year, if it's not unfair to use that. He's had a very good career already, a very good start to his, however you want to put it. Cook, even though it's still the 2nd round, you can't really knock the pick. I didn't like it at the time, but that's not a big deal because every pick, people are going to have a wide range of opinions. And, sometimes if you get an extreme case, a lot of people are going to be wrong. See Josh Allen, right? So didn't really think the Bills needed to even do that. They called him a sub back. Why am I doing that? A second-round pick. Two trades down, but yes. Anyway, back and forth, ping pong. And now we have the reigning NFL rushing leader. I think even I would love to talk about Cook too. Or, if you want to talk about the stadium, I'd still be very much into that from Saturday. But I mean, I've been pretty vocal on Cook, like just sort of thinking, yeah, he's a guy, he's fine, he's good. To think that for his size and to be on a Josh Allen team, which there's good and bad to this, for a running back's chances to like lead the NFL in yards, to think that he would have done that by now, year 4 in the NFL, is pretty incredible. Like, I don't know if anybody was ever projecting rushing leader from this guy. I mean, there's some damn good running backs who even play on third down in the NFL, unlike Cook, and he still topped them all. I was going to say, the touchdown stat might even be more amazing the year before because Allen rushes for double digits in touchdowns every year. And he still did it, Cook. He still tied for, was it Derrick Henry and someone else, I think. I think there were 2 or 3 guys who were tied for the league. 16 was a number 2 years ago. And did that on 207 carries, by the way. Last year, Cook had 309. He had 102 more carries last year than the year before. Last year, he leads the NFL in yards. His yards per attempt were a little bit higher, but not dramatic. The year before, he shares the touchdown lead in the NFL on 207 carries, which is pretty nuts. So what's the point? I'm not going to use, because it's not fair in specifics individually to say this, like, well, the Bills could have drafted Breece Hall like that one guy wanted them to. It would have cost them more to do it, early second instead of end of the second. And he's had a torn ACL. He's had a couple of other dings. Cook has been very durable. Cook hasn't missed a game in like 2 years, right? Maybe one. He missed one. He missed a game at the Jets, and Ray Davis went off. Yes, but, very durable for a guy his size especially. That's been a huge plus. Never going to lead the NFL in anything if you can't stay on the field. So he's done that. But it's just, it's not Hall and an injury or two that are really, it's not results over process. It's not like, well, you see what happened. But it is also the point, or it's a lot of the point about running backs. And just the injury risk is really always there. And I don't need Josh Allen on the field in the preseason or DJ Moore on the field in the preseason or almost number 1, but it can't be higher than number 2, James Cook on the field in the preseason, especially if they're going to be digging chunks out of the field. That's not great. I saw Kyle Allen slide. You see that play where he slid in front of the Bills sideline and a huge piece of the turf came up. And I wondered if this would be kind of funny, or maybe not funny, but interesting. I wonder if like the calculus on Josh Allen sliding changes. If that seems like a pretty easy way to get hurt. You could just not slide, dive forward, take a knee even, whatever. You could, as we know, Allen, he's been a tough convert over in Josh Allen into the sliding sphere. I mean, there's lots of ways to end a play, quarterback on the run, and he hasn't been injured at all. However, he's done it. And, he likes to run over guys or even jump, even like leap over guys. Like he wants the whole experience. Now it's Kyle Allen where it happened, but he takes like the sort of the perfect baseball slide in front of, as I remember it, in front of the Bills bench. And like the huge piece of the turf comes up. And I don't know if that is a thing. I guess I want to ask Sal about that and just see kind of how it smells here over the next couple of weeks. But if that is a thing, they're going to be in there tomorrow night, open practice. Like people are going to see that field for themselves, maybe for the first time, some. And then I don't know, like, do I want to slide anymore? If that seems like a very kind of scary possibility. I mean, really, just thinking about the physics of it. What are my best chances, to put it this way, of getting hurt at the end of a rushing, a scramble? Is it diving head first? Well, that's a little bit risky. The slide is the one where they're not allowed to touch you, even though you still see that happen sometimes. That happened on Saturday. The slide is the one where you do it because you're supposed to not be able to get hit, legally anyway, after the slide. And this is one where it was not about that at all, but that big chunk of turf might have been a little bit scary for them. Okay, so, yeah. What was it like in there? I have not been. Maybe you have by now. What was like the number one thing you thought about it? I'll tell you what I thought watching it on TV when we come back. 803-0550 is the number. Dan Leberfeld on the Jets in the AFC East. Sal Capaccio at 5. I'm Mike Schopp. Bulldog is off this week. Thanks for joining me. This is WGR.
For more comfort.
Now's the perfect time to make yourself comfortable with a new electric heating and cooling system from Belknap.
In Western New York, summer and winter bring extreme temperature conditions. Make yourself comfortable with Mitsubishi electric heat pumps, designed to keep your home cool in the summer and warm in the winter, no matter how hot or cold it gets outside. Call Belknap today to learn more.
I'm Gary Garfalo, president of Belknap. We work on your schedule. We don't charge more for weekends and evenings. That's why we say,
Give Belknap a ring.
So we have our first preseason game Saturday. What did you think? Some of you were at the scrimmage and the
I didn't think there was ever a moment, through the game that I was kind of felt like I was out of it or trying to figure it all out. Like I had a lot of fun out there. I miss football, right? And so it was good. I felt like the energy on the sideline was something that we were really, preaching to the guys, and I thought it was important.
Joe Brady, the Bills beat Carolina on Saturday. This week they'll be in Cleveland. They travel on Wednesday. You fly that if you're the Bills? You fly to Cleveland? Is that worth it? I guess all that equipment. Anyway, the travel day is Wednesday, and then Saturday is the game. So they'll be in Cleveland for a couple of joint practices later this week. There's a lot of that already this week in the NFL, it seems. And then the Steelers are here next weekend for the preseason finale, and then it's on to Week 1 and Houston. 803-0550 for your thoughts. Would love to know from some more of you just what you thought of the place on Saturday. I think this is not anything that interesting or what a tease, what a setup, or unusual, but watching the game on TV, it's just so weird to see them on grass with a Bills logo at midfield. I mean, they've had lots of games. They've had games in Carolina that looked a lot like that, right? I mean, they're in white. Carolina blue at home. I mean, that's just like the game could have been in Charlotte, except for the fact that it wasn't. And you have the Bills logo, not painted yet, but just, it was all very weird to me. I'm just, like a lot of you, like most of you. My whole life with them has been in the other place. And I've been on that field lots of times. There have been different incarnations of that surface from like the 70s and maybe into the 80s where it just was like pavement. And then that got better. Then you have the black pellets that kick up all the time toward the end of it. But this grass, I think it's great. I hope that it isn't a problem. But it's fun that it's different. And then all the shots from outside, I mean, they did their share of that on Saturday, giving you a look at the place from up above. And I was disoriented. I mean, I know it's there, and the ones where I could see the field house were the ones that worked the best for me because I know where that is. So here's the stadium. There's the field house. Okay. And right there is where the other stadium is supposed to be, and it's gone. That worked for me. When they were taking shots of the stadium from the other sides where you couldn't see the field house, I was trying to figure out where all the parking was, and it almost looked fake. It almost looked like it was just sort of an AI creation or something like that. But obviously, it's really there, and we are really to this moment where they have moved. And it's just, how long does it take to get used to that? When I watch them play in 2 weeks against the Steelers, which I probably will do, even though it's still the preseason, or then, of course, against Detroit, it has to be weird for a while, doesn't it? It's not just going to be, okay, I watched half of a game against Carolina, so now I'm completely transitioned over to, all right, these are the new digs now. But I wonder if it'll be like, I can't know how distracting it'll be or how long it'll take to get comfortable with their playing somewhere else. And I mean, I don't think that's, like I said, I don't think this is really that interesting a take, but that's what I was thinking about on Saturday. Like, look at this. And, even some shots from friends sent me pictures from inside that were, kind of cool. My one buddy was like, I have an obstructed view seat. And he sent me a picture of it, and it was the goalposts. Like, okay, good one. The goalposts are in my way. What's WGR's phone number? I can't see. The goalposts are a problem. Anyway, it's going to be a while before I think probably all of us get used to that being their home stadium. I mean, just the same shots of the old place over the years from up above, and then, all of the scoreboard, the tunnel, all the different icons within the place. Everything's somewhere else now. And I just feel it's really incredible that it's true, and they're playing on grass at home. I love it. I hope that it isn't a problem, that surface, because it sounds like maybe it is a little bit. But yeah, I just couldn't really believe it on Saturday. I appreciated that from what I saw of the local broadcast, they were all about the momentousness, if you will, of the move, and like, this is really here. They had Pete on, Pete Gwelly, and just really talking about how special it was that they were in there. And that's really the thing about the game that was by far the most interesting, just like that this is real. Line's open for your calls. Let's go to Brad here. Hi, Brad.
Mike, you just mentioned, the momentousness of it. It's 30 years since KeyBank Center opened this fall. So that just gives you a scale of how long it's been since this community experienced something brand spanking new like this. Mm-hmm. I also wanted to mention a perspective from the broadcast, and does it feel like the Bills Stadium? It's just different. I noticed when there was a field goal, there's not the tunnel there, or right. The shadows, right? The old Highmark did not have shadows on the field, and with that canopy, it causes those shadows. Mm-hmm. So it's just a different visual experience.
Yeah, good point. Were you there? No, you were watching on TV like I was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just watched on TV, and, you can tell when you watch on NFL broadcasts what stadium they're playing in. And so it's going to take me a few games for a while to say, oh, this is Highmark.
It looked like they were playing in Charlotte.
Exactly. And I always hate those games where there's the shadows on the field. It just always felt weird to me. It's going to take a while for me to get used to, there's a shadow on one whole side of the stadium, depending on what time the game is.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Brad. Like white uniforms like the Bills would wear on the road in a game against the Panthers on a grass field. You're in Carolina. Nothing wrong with that. It's just sort of that, again, the adjustment, like he said, as well, to get with this is the new place. So I did feel to me like there were a lot of empty seats, and I don't know if that's just because people were walking around or people like wanted to see the whole place. So you tell me, like you might have, I think if it had been I would have wanted to explore on Saturday. And so that means there's a lot of empty seats because if people are doing that, that would have been me for sure. Because, we're all so interested in it, and like, where is everything, and what do they have? What's new? What's maybe something, a part of the stadium that I might want to kind of like have be my favorite in certain situations. I think most regular season games I'm in my seat. It's not baseball. That's one thing that we talked about last week. I love when I'm traveling and have a chance to go to a Major League Baseball game. I don't really care at all where I sit. If it is a big game and, I really want a certain outcome, then I do, because I'm going to want to sit there and stare at it. But really what I want to do is walk around all day. I've been to lots of games in Toronto, which is not the most aesthetically enjoyable ballpark. It's much better with the roof open. But I thought about going up there yesterday and just didn't at the last minute. Just, walking around and finding little places, little bars or whatever in the stadium. That's really fun. I would never want to have to sit in my seat for 9 innings. I mean, that's a negative, because, I'm a more casual fan, and there are 10 times more games in a baseball season than a football season. So when the Bills kick it off with Detroit on that Thursday night, I'm not done, but I'm almost done with the new stadium stuff, because now I need to win. And off the field and what it looks like and where the tunnel went and all that kind of stuff, I think it'll still be a little weird. but that's not where my head is going to be. Now it's going to be about winning that game. But, you go to any baseball game, I am much more of a Blue Jays fan than I am a Yankees fan, and would have enjoyed seeing them win yesterday. They did not. Good game, but just like whatever, maybe we'll win tomorrow. You don't have that in football. For I think most of us, it's a whole different thing. But yeah, just incredible to see it, and for many of you, for thousands of you to have been there, and onward, right? The fact that they won the game doesn't mean a single thing to me. I feel like it's kind of funny they even keep score in the preseason, but they do. I got to a point where I was jumping around a little bit. The Browns and the Bears were playing at the same time on Saturday, and NFL Network had that game. I was with NFL Network for a few minutes leading up to kickoff, went over to the Bills game for kickoff, and then went kind of back and forth after Allen left, after the game had really a quarter and a half or something like that. And man, the Bills are going to be in Cleveland this week. Watson. So there was a situation in this game in Chicago where maybe it was on a Watson run. Not that that matters, but the officials couldn't decide if they wanted to call it a first down. Maybe it was marked short. Maybe we had space ref. By the way, on the local broadcast, it was said that the referee was not on the field. They were trying that. I hadn't heard anything about that, but they were, for the first quarter, did that ever change? I have to see if Sal knows about that. Anybody who might know anything about that, I should have done more homework today, but what's up with that? But anyway, in Chicago, there was this kind of long delay where they were waiting to announce whether it was going to be a first down, and it was a long enough delay already before the referee, if it was actually the referee in that game, went on mic and said, "We're going to bring out the chains." And the announcer's like, wow, that doesn't happen anymore. They were so, I guess, either unsure or maybe something broke that they brought the chains out to measure for the first down. And I think what happened was that Watson got it right away. And then before the next play, Cleveland was called for delay of game. And I've said a million times about Allen, for as obvious as his physical talent is, all that little stuff, never disrespect it. Just, the mechanics of playing the position. Because rarely are the Bills done in by a mental mistake. Deshaun Watson has been in the league for a decade. How you could get a delay of game penalty after what might have been 4 or 5 minutes of a delay. Just run something. How that could even be possible, I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little harsh there. Maybe something happened that I don't know about on that one. Maybe somebody came on the field late. But my goodness, just the times you see, I saw it somewhere else this weekend too. The times you see quarterbacks just not having, Kenny Pickett, it happened in the game here on Saturday at one point. Just come on, get it together. These are veterans, and it was always a thing. The pre-Allen Bills, not so much Tyrod Taylor, but guys before him especially, where they just could not get the logistics right often enough. A delay of game penalty or a timeout called immediately into the game because there's some sort of mix-up. Just come on. And that happened with the Browns. I know it's the preseason, but still, it didn't happen here. It should not happen ever. If you're really trying to, get right. That was just, I don't think I went back to that game after the Browns had a delay of game penalty, after a 5-minute review. Just, dude. Well, we'll be talking about them a lot this week, of course, with the Bills heading there Wednesday, and they'll have practices there later in the week, and then a game with the Browns on the weekend. We'll have Daryl Reiter on from Cleveland, a go-to Browns guest for us. That'll be on Wednesday. We'll talk some Jets today. Dan Leberfeld, Jets Confidential. Breece Hall goes down at practice today. Wonder if Dan can be pretty optimistic about them and, also honest, but I think of Dan, and I like him a lot. I think of him as being somebody that can see the positive side of stuff for a team that's been so bad mostly for so long. We'll see what we get from Dan, and then Sal will join me at 5. I'm Mike Schopp. Thanks for listening. Bulldog is off this week. You were listening to WGR. Game. Some of you would have been only at this game, and I'm really interested in what it was like for those of you that saw it for the first time. We were all seeing a game there for the first time, at least, and I'm here for it. I don't think I need an excuse, but I have one, and that's that it's in terms of the football, it was the preseason opener. So we don't care about anything that happened, right? We don't care about anything that happened in this game. Literally nothing. Nothing is interesting to me at all about it. I watched half of it, maybe even a little more than that. I saw Buechele whenever it was he went in. So by then I was in and out of it. But, I'm just telling you, like I watched all of Josh Allen. I watched Bryce Young. I saw, the game take shape. But then you were never getting me to the second half of that game on TV on a nice day. So I don't know, say what you want. But what did you think first time there, or even second? 803-0550 is the number. I think the only interesting, even like semi-interesting football development of the day is Allen and Moore playing as much as they did, even though it wasn't so much. And you had that, starting with Allen, you had that kind of, I mean this largely as a compliment. Look at his career. I'm not just sort of waking up to what Josh Allen looks like to watch, but some reckless abandon. The touchdown is one example, even to Coleman on that play. But that's his genius as a player. But watching Jalen Phillips get his hand on him and wondering if an old rival was just going to throw him, like spike him to the turf. It didn't happen. But for a split second there, I thought it was going to. And, I actually spent some time on that in my head, watching the game alone. Like, nobody would condone that. But, man, they're not playing Miami in the preseason, right? When Phillips was on Miami. But just like the opportunity to sort of mess with or even take out a great player changes the entire picture of the league. And so, obviously good for us. And again, that's the kind of thing that everybody would hate on if it were to happen. Like if he were just Phillips, super aggressive with Allen there. He's playing the game, and Allen gets rid of the ball, and okay, that's the end of it. But that's a guy we've gone back with a little bit, and I thought for a second there, like maybe more was coming. The point isn't what Jalen Phillips could have done. The point is just, well, that was the risk. That's always the risk when you play your starters in the preseason, is that they run an injury risk. And Allen got hit a few times. I'm sure he said that it was good, right? Doesn't he always just tell you whatever the thing is that would come off the best? So I'm sure he would say that, yeah, I was happy about it. I don't know. Maybe he didn't. But he hasn't played in the preseason other years. This time he does. Like, I want to play. Okay, well, that's right in line with what's actually going to happen. So, of course, he's going to say that. And I don't know, maybe he did. Football players do like to get that first hit. That's the point, the benefit maybe rather of the first game, as long as you survive it. Now I got DJ Moore on one play weaving for the DB to come hit him. Guys. And, then he's got an ankle thing that he's limping around with that I guess wasn't as bad as it might have looked at first, which is, of course, good news for the Bills. I don't know. It's the examples where there is an injury that really put the spotlight on the whole thing. And when it doesn't happen, how much breath do you want to waste, railing against it? Allen wasn't injured. Neither, it seems, was DJ Moore. Like, nobody was. So, okay, well, you got away with it. You can't just every day, every game, waste your life on, why did they have to be out there? They have good reasons, coaches, for putting those guys on the field. I just don't think they're as good as, the downside of it if it were to go wrong. You've got Jeremiah Love in Arizona, who there's so he's got a high ankle sprain. This is the 3rd overall pick, who's a running back. I know I spent a minute on this on Friday because it had already happened. But you've got the number 3 overall pick, who's a running back, which is in and of itself, I think, kind of insane. And he's out there against Vegas carrying the ball 14 times in the first half. Why? And their new coach, LaFleur, got defensive about it today. I mean, what? How can you blame anybody for questioning that? Of all positions, to have a guy basically play the hell out of him in the first half of the preseason opener running back, what do you need to see here? So he might not play the opener now, Love, for Arizona, which is, that's not a team with, any expectations, at least externally this year, but you have this shiny prize from the draft that I think most people in the data world will tell you was a pleasure being on Brad's show today. If you missed it, he came in to where I was, working about 2:25. He's like, I'd love to have a conversation with you about fantasy football this week. And I just interrupted him to say, how about right now? That's usually, I'm really always kind of at the ready for that. And plus, I didn't want to schedule something with him for another time and then just not be here for some reason, So let's go. And he's got an auction draft this weekend. 27 years, this league. I've known about it since I've known Brad. I just feel like that's really special. And you got to, I think, do some clever things to keep that interesting and to give people. He has it, a few hours away, which makes it sort of like a destination draft, destination wedding kind of vibe, I would assume. You got to keep it lively, right? Figure out different ways. I love that he has the last place team from the year before doesn't actually get to draft, but they have to be there to run it. That'll keep you interested in week 15 when your team is near last place and, you're going to have to go next year to the draft, but not be able to participate. Yeah, I think we'd all be sort of feeling the pressure to put our lineups in that case. So good on those guys for that. Dan Leberfeld next. Not a great idea, but nobody doubts his talent. And he gives from the real world, if I may differentiate that way, you give a team with fans that don't really have a lot to look forward to, somebody new and exciting, and then he's hurt then in the preseason. No excuse. If any position should be exempt from that kind of, a couple of plays if you have to, but 14 touches and a half, I mean, in the Super Bowl, that's a lot. So, I don't know. Just that seemed pretty crazy, and they're going to pay for it with Love hurt. And, some of these injuries, by the way, and we got to hope this isn't, well, DJ Moore, but even our other guys who did not play on Saturday, I'm thinking about the DBs or Skylar Bell, even McGovern, who copped to not being sure if he could make it to week one, like that was reported. What happens, not always, but what happens is I'm thinking about like soft tissue type stuff. Maybe this is Bell. Maybe this is, it certainly is a few of their guys. Ty Johnson, even maybe, like whether it does set you on the wrong path for the year. I know from fantasy and from covering and watching the Bills all these years, maybe this is Hairston a little bit. Maybe this is Josh Palmer in his career, where an injury in camp or in the preseason doesn't have to seem like much because everybody's talking about, the team is talking about how they'll be fine and they'll probably not miss games, whatever it is. But I think some of these times it's obvious that the player goes into the regular season diminished or compromised is a better word for it because of the injury. And, you can't avoid all that. Hairston last year got hurt at Fisher, and that wasn't something that the Bills deserved any blame for. Like, you have to practice, right? I think. Do you? I think you got a rookie who is, especially when it's a rookie, and it was just a fluke thing. But it not only can mess with your season, it can mess with your career if that keeps happening. Needless to say, right? The Jets had a scare today, maybe worse than a scare. Breece Hall, their top running back, takes a pass in the flat and goes down on his own. People got pretty freaked out about that as soon as it was reported. Sounds like what they're saying anyway, at least. And there's always two things, right? There's always what the team says, and then very often it's very different what like other people who might be in the know say too. I'll talk to Dan Leberfeld in an hour or a little bit less on the Jets today with some more of his insight on Breece Hall. But they're talking groin injury. And that could be week one, like that could be a few weeks. And so, good luck to them, I guess, and to him. When I think about Breece Hall, he's excellent. He had, I think it's the night of the Rodgers Achilles injury, the week one Bills-Jets game. And Hall was coming off, if I remember right, a torn ACL from his rookie year. It happened in Denver. And so here was Breece Hall, year two. Aaron Rodgers was new there. And Rodgers goes down almost immediately in the game. And Hall did not, it's the Jets. Of course, this was true. But just kind of a meh kind of season. People saw.
The Buffalo Bills got their preseason started with a win on Saturday, 29-14 over the Carolina Panthers. And next up is going to be a trip to Cleveland, take on the Browns on Saturday at 1. No media at practice today for the Bills, and then later this week, the Bills are going to be in Cleveland early before the game, as they'll have a number of joint practices again later this week. But for more on the game over the weekend, Sal Capaccio has a piece up at our website, WGR550.com, and do stay tuned. We'll touch base with Sal in just a little bit at 5 p.m. There was a roster move, though, from the Bills, as they are signing linebacker Otis Reese IV, and to do that, they have released fullback Jackson Aker. Some other notes around the league. Jets running back Breece Hall suffered a groin strain at practice today, though according to head coach Aaron Glenn, it does not appear to be a big deal. And then former Bills linebacker Von Miller has found his new home. It was reported over the weekend. It was made official today. He is signing with the Cowboys on a one-year deal worth $5.5 million. Then in baseball, off days for the Yankees, Blue Jays, and Bisons. They'll each get back to it tomorrow, but for tonight, we do have the Mets. They are hosting the Padres at 7:10. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet with you for the extra mile since 1935. I'm Zach Jones for Western New York's Voice of the Fan, WGR.
It's Mike Schopp.
Hey, Put a little. I never get this line out the first time. It's not even good. Hey, put a little bit more in there, cowboy.
And the Bulldog.
What's your degree in?
Kicking ass and taking names.
On WGR Sports Radio 550.
White Sox don't make the cut, but 5.5 up at the Cubs tonight. I guess that's a night game. Mike Schopp here. Bulldog is off this week. With me now, old friend, frequent guest of ours, and we're grateful for that. Dan Leberfeld joining me on the Wester Hotline at Jets Whispers on Twitter. Dan, how are you enjoying life, Twitter, Jets camp, and whatever else?
Yes, I am, and it's always great to be on Western New York Sports Giant.
Yes. I never really have to have a first question for you, really. I just sort of say your name, and you're gonna come at me with something that you just heard in the last 60 seconds.
Well, at least I didn't do the West Her Hotline, which I've overused that, though I support that business, but overplayed that one a little bit.
Of course, yes. What's new this year with the Jets? I mean, Geno Smith is new, although also old, but same coach. How different is this year from last year so far?
Well, it's definitely different, and I think a big reason why is Frank Reich, who you guys know very well in your neck of the woods. He's really helped change the vibe, helped change the narrative, because not only can he come in and help revive this offense, which was not very good last year, but also he's like an assistant head coach, almost like a bench coach in baseball, who the head coach, Aaron Glenn, who had a rough first year, he'd be the first to admit it, can bounce things off of all the time. You guys know what a great guy Frank is. Doesn't really have any hidden agendas here. A lot of people say, well, if Aaron gets off to a bad start, Frank's the interim coach in waiting. And maybe not. But I don't think Frank has that agenda. I think Frank truly wants to help Aaron. So I think one of the best offseason moves, aside from some of the draft picks and free agent additions, was the addition of Frank Reich for more reasons than one.
What do you know, or do you think he wants to change about their offense, other than the general, let's improve? Are there certain things he wants, or you're seeing that you think he might want to do more of or less?
Well, I would say more play action, because if you look at Geno Smith's history, you look at the analytics, he's best when he's able to sell play action and create separation between the defenders and the wide receivers. If you look at his years in Seattle, he was best when they had play action. And then they went to a college coordinator during Mike McDonald's first year with the Seahawks, a guy who's not there anymore. He's actually back in college with the University of Alabama. But under that coordinator, Geno wasn't as good. It was that shotgun, read option, RPO, you know all that stuff, Mike. Mm-hmm. And Geno wasn't as good as before that college coordinator came in, and they were playing a lot of play action. So I think play action fakes, and I know you heard Zach Jones' update. We can get into this a little bit. Breece Hall got hurt today. But they intend to run the ball a lot, sell the play action, make life a little bit easier for Geno, where he can have separation in that secondary to throw to easier targets than you would under the shotgun.
Are you optimistic for Geno Smith, Dan?
Well, I think that when you look at Geno, obviously he's not an elite quarterback. He's not an upper-tier quarterback. But if you have a good defense, good special teams, and you can run the ball, he can be a game manager for you. He's proved that in his past. And I always point to this stat. If you look at Geno's 3 years as the starter in Seattle, his record is very similar to Baker Mayfield the last 3 years in Tampa Bay. And the Jets are paying Geno Smith $3 million of their own money this year. The rest of his salary is coming from the Vegas Raiders. So for $3 million, actually $3.3 million this year, if he can manage the game, that's a heck of a bargain for Darren Muji and the Jets front office to have Geno go in there. They've got a lot of weapons in the passing game now, and just complement the offense without having to put the offense on his back, get the ball into the hands of the playmakers, be a good point guard. I think Geno can do that.
Let's fill that out with a look at who these weapons are. I mean, we'll get to Breece Hall and his news today, but, he's outstanding, and he's proven that. Garrett Wilson is great. just hasn't been in the right kind of climate yet to get maybe more attention. I feel like he's underrated. And then after that, you've got a couple of draft picks here. Size that up, Dan. Like, so if he wants to be somebody, Geno Smith if he wants to be somebody that can get the ball to different guys, the point guard point you made, how deep do they run?
Yeah, they have a lot of weapons when you look at Garrett Wilson as the number one. And Garrett Wilson has not had a prolific training camp necessarily, and I don't say that in a negative way. And I give Geno Smith credit for this. Unlike last year where they were forcing the ball to Garrett Wilson, and I think it contributed to getting hurt because they were just forcing it to him whether he was open or not, and he's not the biggest guy, and he took a lot of hits and ended up hurting his knee. But he's back at 100% now. But what's going on in camp is you're seeing guys like Adonai Mitchell, the former Colt, who's the second receiver, really having a good camp because they're bracketing Garrett, and Mitchell's getting favorable coverages, and Geno's taking advantage of that. Same with the slot receiver. Now, when you look at Omar Cooper, he's eventually going to be the slot receiver, but right now it's Isaiah Williams, who was the team MVP last year as a slot receiver and returner. He's having a very good camp, once again, because Garrett Wilson is getting bracket coverage, and Geno's throwing to Mitchell, and he's throwing to Williams, taking advantage of single coverage. The same with throwing a Breece Hall out of the backfield. And also Omar Cooper is very involved. He just is a guy that's still learning the offense, still getting comfortable. He has more of a route tree than he had at Indiana last year. So he's done some things. And the tight end room is excellent. Even though Kenyon Sadiq is out with a groin injury, when you look at that room, Mason Taylor in his second year at LSU, the son of Jason Taylor, he's having a very good camp. They've got a sleeper in the tight end room named Jelani Woods, a 6'7", 250-pound tight end who runs 4.61. He's had a good camp. So plenty of weapons for Geno Smith to throw to. So if he just plays that point guard role, he can be a solid game manager for them.
Dan, is it interesting to you, the point you're making about bracket coverage here in training camp, how coaches can manipulate that, right? I mean, I wonder, sometimes there might be like a lot of thought that goes into that, where you're trying to build someone's confidence, or you're trying to, establish someone else, be that Mitchell or someone else in the receiving core. You could do that either way. And, there are certain teams like New England with Gonzalez or somebody, where if they have, I'm not sure the Jets have this, but somebody that's elite as like a lockdown corner, shutdown corner, then, you might have interesting thoughts about how to run a practice. Like, I think it was New England we were talking about last week, where Gonzalez, who I guess has missed time, but how A.J. Brown, he's sort of locking up A.J. Brown, and how a quarterback has to, pivot accordingly. That's an interesting little sort of a maybe more subtle strategy for a coach to have to ponder.
Yeah, I give Frank Reich credit. I give Geno Smith credit. I never understood this in all my years covering the league, and we go way back covering this league, going back to your days when you covered the Bills. And my company's in Rochester, and I saw you a lot there when you worked for Shout Magazine. All these years, and I'm sure it's baffled you too, where you have play callers and quarterbacks who insist on forcing the ball to the number one receiver, whether he's open or not. I never understood. Just throw to the open guy. And if they're double covering your number one, throw to the slot guy 20 times if he's open. I don't get the logic, but I do think some organizations will have the mindset, hey, we're paying that guy a lot of money, and it's almost like they want to appease the owner, like to get his money's worth or something. Or in the case of like A.J. Brown in Philly, you mentioned him, I think there were times because of all the chatter about him not being happy with his targets, sometimes they force the ball to him. Mike, it's never made any sense to me. I understand some of these receivers get nervous about the Hall of Fame or leading the league in receiving. No way to run an offense, no way to run a team. Throw to the open guy. It's not rocket science. And what the Jets are doing this summer under Reich and Geno Smith is throwing to the open guy, and Garrett's not complaining. He got paid. I'm not saying Garrett's a money-hungry guy, but he got his big contract. And I think when you look at Garrett Wilson, he's a team guy. He came from Ohio State, where they had a lot of good receivers. We know how many high draft picks come out of that receiver room. So I don't think Garrett is upset. I see Garrett running down the field, congratulating, some long shot receiver, or, an 80 Mitchell or Isaiah Williams getting the ball, and Garrett's happy. So is it rocket science? And I know you're close to being a rocket scientist.
Thank you,
Mike.
Yes.
I know, with your intellect.
One class short.
I don't get the forcing to the number one receiver come hell or high water. It's never made sense to me.
Well, I think it can really, not that it should necessarily, Dan, but come down to, a guy like A.J. Brown has a lot of clout, and Wilson has some. If I'm Wilson, all I want to do now is just be on a good team for once, right? So there might be just different dynamics like that for a coach to have to figure out and just sort of deal with. It's not always so easy to me, but Brown is an interesting one while we're talking about him because, I can make this sound pretty easy, I guess. Philadelphia did so much winning, and he still was miserable, it seemed, like reading a book on the sideline during a game and all that drama with the Eagles. So maybe that's sort of like the inverse of the Jets, where, I don't know, was he bored? He just, you have personality conflicts, sure. But yeah, the Jets are a team where you'd like to think everybody would just sort of be up for whatever makes them good.
Exactly. And the other day, I was watching a press conference with Stephen Jones. It wasn't a press conference. It was actually on Sirius XM during their training camp tour. And he said Quinnen Williams, who the Jets traded in the middle of last year to Dallas and got a king's ransom in return, he was talking, Stephen Jones, after he and Jerry gave an extension to Quinnen Williams about what a great leader he is, how hungry he is to win. And I know sometimes that is just cliche, but it's really true with Quinnen. Because covering this team a long time, you'd talk to Quinnen after another loss, and he'd have that look in his eye like, you know what, I came from Alabama under Nick Saban. I'm just tired of all this losing. Sauce Gardner had a lot of success in college, University of Cincinnati. And Garrett Wilson, too. They run out of answers after games. You probably saw that during some of the lean years in Buffalo. Some of their core players like, what do you want me to say, guys, after yet the fifth straight loss or another, 3-13 or 3-14 season? You're like, what do you want me to say? So I felt like Quinnen reached that point. So he is so happy in Dallas, not just because he got a new contract, but that looks like a very good team and he's excited to win. And I think there's no question Garrett Wilson has that mind set right now. Like, you know what, the catches are fine, but I want to win. But the problem with some of these receivers is they're thinking legacy, they're thinking Hall of Fame, they're thinking next contract. And if you have a season where you have 60 catches, hurts Hall of Fame, hurts legacy, hurts contract. So there's kind of a mixed agenda there. I mean, I'm sure A.J. Brown wants to win, but he's also thinking about Canton.
Yep, and some of these guys end up, they're thinking of Sammy Watkins, who never came close to a Hall of Fame career, but, of course, started in Buffalo, and he's on a different team all the time, You also, I think, just for that point, the longer you can stick with one organization, the better for you. Now Brown is on his third team with New England. With Dan Leberfeld, I'm Mike Schopp. Bulldog is off today. This is WGR. So, we'll get to it here finally. Breece Hall went down today. Were you there? What did it look like?
It's one of those situations where you're happy training camp is open, the whole practice. From a journalistic standpoint, from a reporting standpoint, you never want a player to get hurt. But the Jets have their practice field set up a way when they practice on field one. Field one is a grass field. And when we're covering on field one, you could pick anywhere along the 100-yard field to place yourself and watch the whole practice. Field three, not to get into the weeds too much, we're on a roof overlooking the field, so it's not really picking your spot along the 100-yard field. Mm-hmm. So that vantage point is good, too. So on field one, I'm sitting there down the sideline in the red zone watching practice. There are no other reporters there, and I'm not saying that because I did anything brilliant. It was the luck of the draw. Once again, not happy a player got hurt. But I was literally right there where Breece Hall got hurt, right in front of me, to the point that after he got hurt, I moved away a little bit because I didn't want to be that close to a player being treated for an injury. So he runs a route out of the backfield, and Geno Smith hits him in the left flat, and he runs down the sideline, and when he attempts to cut, he goes down, and he was cursing a little bit because he was frustrated because he clearly pulled a groin muscle or strained a groin muscle, and he went down. He was holding his right groin. One thing I've learned over the years, not from being an athlete, Mike, is you got the left and your right, got the right groin. Well, this was looked like a right groin injury, and he was holding it, and they got up and they walked him to the medical tent, and we didn't see him again. I would suspect that you're not going to see him anymore this summer. He's not going to be in any more training camp practices, and he's not going to be in any more preseason games. But if it's just a strain, that's usually a 1 to 3 week injury. If it's just a strain, as Aaron Glenn said it was today, I would think he'd be ready for the opener at Tennessee. I just don't think we're going to see any more of him in camp or in the preseason.
Well, Dan, I mean, that's going to make drafting in fantasy tough because we're going to have to guess a little bit. I guess maybe there'll be a little bit of a dip, and you can get Breece Hall cheaper now that there is this injury. Do you think or even know if the Jets were prepared on, like, how big of a workload were we talking about for him? There are a couple of interesting other backs there. Like, is Breece Hall, was he slated to be a 3-down running back this year?
Oh, there's no question about it. First of all, they paid him, and I'm not saying that dictates it, but they just gave him, his big second contract. Right. Though it's a weird contract situation, and I was talking about this with Vic Carucci on Sirius XM the other day, because you look at the gap. This could be an interesting thing for you to break down as far as these running back numbers with James Cook up next year. The James Cooks of the world and the Breece Halls and Achane and Achane, not the same spelling, they all got around 28, 29 million guaranteed. And then you saw the situation down in Atlanta and the situation in Detroit where their franchise running backs, Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs, got 51 million guaranteed. Mike, I've never seen an off season where you had really good running backs got paid like Kenneth Walker in Kansas City, and then Achane and Achane in New Orleans and with Miami, and they get around 28, 29 million guaranteed, and Breece Hall as well. And then you have running backs like Robinson and Gibbs literally getting 51 million guaranteed, 23 million more than the other running backs in the offseason. That is a weird gap in a free agent offseason. But I digress there. I just think that Breece Hall is a 3-down back. He isn't just a really good running back. He literally has wide receiver skills as a receiver out of the backfield. The way he tracks the ball downfield, you would think he was a receiver. So, yeah, Frank Reich was going to use him a lot on all 3 downs. So you make a good point about fantasy drafts as far as whether you pick him early, because Aaron Glenn, let me just say this. Aaron Glenn is an optimist, glass half full. When he talks about injuries, Mike, if you're looking for a primary care physician out of New Jersey, I'd go to Aaron Glenn, because every injury, he's glass half full. It doesn't look that bad. Every injury that's training camp. And I'm not making fun of him, and I have a lot of respect for him. But, man, every injury they suffer, he won't be out long. So I have no idea. With the groin, those could be tricky. But if it's just a strain, generally it's 1 to 3 weeks. But from a fantasy standpoint, I'd be careful. But his backup, Braylon Allen, people are buying him as far as fantasy. This guy, he is 245, 250 pounds without an ounce of fat. Like, he is a freak, man. He had a really nice touchdown run. I'm sure you saw that, Mike, on the highlights in the preseason week 1 against Tampa Bay. He is a stud, man. So he's not the same kind of back as Breece Hall, but he's very good.
Oh, the thighs. Braylon Allen, the thighs. Did Aaron Glenn get that from Pete Carroll? Because Pete Carroll was famous for that. Just like, remember Chris Carson? Oh, no biggie. And then he was basically retired because of his injuries.
Yeah, he's like that. He's very optimistic. He's very supportive of his guys. But sometimes you got to be careful of that, because if you put a short timeline on it and then the players come back, sometimes the player and his agent get mad because the timeline expectation puts him in a rough spot. Like one of the big stories this summer, to me, there's a really big story that hasn't received a lot of coverage, is Kenyon Sadiq, the rookie tight end, 16th pick overall out of Oregon, a tight end who ran a freakish 4.39 at the combine. He came to the Jets after having a sports hernia situation last year at Oregon. But the Jets and the player and his agent decided not to have surgery, thought maybe time would heal it. And then in the rookie minicamp, he had a setback. He had a surgery from the famous sports hernia doctor in Philly that everybody goes to. I think his name is Myers. You go in that waiting room in Philadelphia, Mike, it's a who's who of NFL players getting sports hernia surgeries. Everybody goes to that doctor in Philly. He has it fixed. He rehabs in the spring, and then early in camp, he has a setback, and he's been on the sideline ever since. To me, my journalistic chops, that's a big story, isn't it? Yeah. Sports hernia in college, comes in, they do the surgery, has a setback in training camp. I think he's going to be fine in time, Mike, but to me, that's a big story. I don't know when he's going to be back, but that's a similar injury to Brees. So with these sports hernia or groin surgeries or groin injuries, you got to be very careful because we know darn well you could have a setback real easy.
No particular incentive for coaches to be specific when it comes to that. They really don't need to be, as you're talking about here. Another former Jet coach, Todd Bowles, is kind of funny to me in this area too. He's had two this offseason or summer already with Bucky Irving. Earlier in the offseason, he said he'll be back in the summer or fall. And we all went, well, that's kind of a big difference, If you're trying to put a timeline on it, maybe you got to be a little bit better than that. And then with Ibuka, who's got maybe a turf toe now, Dan, he said day to day, week to week. Usually it's one or the other, right? It's either day to day or it's week to week. But Bowles is covering all his bases, I guess.
Oh, I love Todd. They had that joint practice last week, which turned into the Royal Rumble. And I saw the Ibuka injury, and it was just one of those cutting things on a field, and he limped off, and it was the turf toe. But Todd, I love Todd. I covered him. You ever see those T-shirts? I don't know if you know anyone like this, the show I remember that show, Pawn Stars, P-O-W-N, yes. And there was an old man on the show who owned the shop, and he always had the same facial expression for anything, happy, sad, angry. Yeah. Todd Bowles is like that. Every type of emotion, it's the same expression. I wouldn't want to play poker against Todd Bowles.
Dan, last thing for you. What's a good season for the Jets? What's a realistic good season? Will a 500 season or close to that be record-wise it is. It's not a playoff year either, though. What are the goals?
Yeah, I would say around 500. They would be very happy. They haven't had a winning season. I believe the last one was in 2016, that year you remember well from the Jets, because that was the game where they went into Buffalo and had a win, and they had that costly interception in the end zone. That was their last winning season.
15.
So I think they would love, if they could. You have to get my mind recalculated to the 17-game season. Yeah. If they went 9-8, here's the biggest thing. Last year under Aaron Glenn, they kind of regressed as the season progressed. And to me, when you have a rookie head coach, first-year head coach, you're not looking as an owner for a Super Bowl necessarily, but you want to see progress as the guy installs his systems and his culture and incremental progress as the season went along. That wasn't the case last year with the Jets. They were regressing, and I think that's why Todd Bowles made a lot of changes entering year two. I'll never forget that game in Buffalo at the end of the year where the Jets were I understand they were playing a backup quarterback, but the Bills were playing a lot of backups, and the Bills just dominated. I'll give you a perfect example of what I'm talking about. The run defense in that game, right? Ray Davis of the Bills, not the Kinks. Ray Davis ran for 150 yards with an offensive line that had four backups in there because McDermott was resting the starters, and they still ran all over the Jets. That's a really bad sign in week 17 or 18, whatever you call it at the end. So I think around 500 and making progress as the season goes along, that would be considered a good season.
I'll tell you what, I'll make a prediction. They will intercept a pass in week 1 against the Titans, which will top their total from last year. Boom. There it is. There's progress.
I think that's a good prediction. Minka Fitzpatrick looks like the ball hawk they desperately needed last year in the secondary. And Cam Ward, he's a little inconsistent, growing pains right now. So I think that's a very good prediction, Mike.
Get that goose egg out of here. We don't want to have that over our heads again this year. Dan, thanks for your time as always. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Always great to be on. Is Bulldog Parker on tour with his band right now?
I don't know. He went to see the Red Sox play the Pirates this weekend. I believe that was the plan. So I don't think he's still there, but he's gotten out a little bit.
That's good because I'm a big fan of not just the host but the guitarist.
Yes. Yeah, not the Kinks Ray Davis. Appreciate
No.
that clarification. Thanks, Dan. See you next time.
All right, anytime.
Dan Leberfeld at Jets Whispers. Yep. If you didn't know it, you don't listen to us that often, because I love it that the Jets did not have a single interception in their entire season last year with, as it happens, a former outstanding cornerback as their head coach, if that adds to it. I kind of always feel like throwing that in. Mike Schopp here at 803-0550. Tell me what you thought of the place on Saturday if we haven't talked about it yet, you and I. This is WGR.
following their preseason week number 1 win over the Carolina Panthers 29-14. No media at practice today, and a little bit later on this week, the Bills will be in Cleveland for a number of joint practices as Cleveland is their next opponent. They'll be at the Browns Saturday at 1 p.m. And then there was also some small roster moves that were made today by Buffalo, signing linebacker Otis Reese the fourth and releasing fullback Jackson Aker. For more, though, on the game and the roster moves, we do have pieces up at our website, WGR550.com. And do stay tuned. We'll talk with Sal Capaccio in a little bit later on at 5 p.m. Former Bills linebacker Von Miller has found a new home. He signs with the Cowboys on a one-year deal worth $5.5 million. And then Jets running back Breece Hall. He suffered a groin strain at practice today. According to head coach Aaron Glenn, it is said to not believed to be a big deal. In college football, the AP preseason poll was released this afternoon. Ohio State comes in at number 1, while reigning national champs Indiana, they slot in at 6. Then in baseball, off days for the Yankees, Blue Jays, and Bisons. They'll each get back to it tomorrow. Tonight, though, the Mets, they are hosting the Padres at 7:10. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet with you for the extra mile since 1935. I'm Zach Jones for Western New York's Voice of the Fan, WGR.
Real live game reps, albeit preseason, it's still real reps and understanding, like, when I break this huddle, where are my eyes going? You know, I got to make sure that we have time on the play clock, and they are on different levels on each side, so just understanding that. But it's no different than going to an away game and pre-game, going out there and making sure that you know exactly where everything's at, but just here feeling comfortable with it.
Josh Allen gets the start Saturday. The Bills beat Carolina. He took some hits. I think fans were maybe really on the edges of their collective seats on Saturday with Allen. Pros, this is really cool. They're actually on grass. The new stadium is real. He plays. Cons, look out! Throw it away. This isn't worth it. DJ Moore inviting, begging for the tackler to come up and challenge him, and then limping away. Come on. All right, we know where the play clock is now. Can we get serious here? Can we get smart? I was watching the game on Saturday on TV, and there are the Bills on the field, and there was a field level shot. I'm like, oh, there's the play clock. Now I know where it is, right there. That 21 right there that means 21 seconds left on the play clock. It's good to know. What did you think of the place? I mean, really, what kind of question is that, right? Just, it's awesome. But I wasn't there, and maybe if you went Saturday after not going to the practice, you know, you might have heard a lot about, well, you would have had you listened to us. I mean, a lot about the obstructed view seats and all of that. I didn't really get any of that this weekend, but I'm pretty sure they didn't change anything. So I would think it'd be almost impossible for the place not to have made a good impression on you. Still, I don't want to move too fast from this story, because this only happens like once in your life, where the Bills move for the first time in 53 years. It's kind of a big deal. And everything that went into it, design elements, but just kind of like your seat, where it was, comfortability, all these kinds of just different things that you'd think about when you make your first appearance. So here for all of that if you want to share. Lines open for your calls. Bulldog is off today. Sal will join me at 5. Yeah, just sort of bouncing around different ideas in my head. I need the Bills to calm down now with Allen and DJ Moore. These practices, like the one with the Browns, can get pretty spicy, though. Like Dan Leberfeld just talking about the Jets and Tampa. And it did happen there. So you got to be a little bit careful, and maybe it's time now that they've gotten that one game in, got through using your stars in the first game at the stadium. All right, now we don't need to do that anymore, I think. So we've got that to talk about. Cleveland this week, Pittsburgh next, and then on to the regular season. There's a new favorite for first coach fired. That moved fast. We were at Aaron Glenn last week. Bulldog and I talked about it for a minute. BetOnline has that up where you can bet on it, and Aaron Glenn was the favorite to be the first coach fired. I'm not, by the way, maybe this is funny, like where you get your information or your takes. Like in fantasy football, if not also in some parts of non-fantasy football talk, the Frank Reich idea gets panned. Like the last 2 times Reich was in the NFL, he was fired mid-season, Indianapolis and then Carolina. Then he went to Stanford last year, and their offense was terrible. And I think it's reasonable to question if I know it's different and maybe it shouldn't be this easy, but if you're like a top offensive mind, you should be able to have a college team run, well, way farther up the list in terms of offensive rankings than Stanford did, which was near the bottom in the entire country. That didn't really look great. So we'll see what the Jets can pull off with Reich. Anyway, Aaron Glenn was the favorite last week for first coach fired, and now it's Dan Quinn. Some stuff with Washington, Quinn and Jaden Daniels, and just maybe they have to not stink early in the season, or else Quinn might be a candidate to be fired. They're an interesting one. I think you might be able to, whether it's betting or just in talking or even fantasy, I think there might be money to be made on Washington. You just have to pick a side. I guess that's always true, right? But Daniels was electrifying as a rookie. He was great. He was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. NFC Championship. Totally unforeseen. He was a high draft pick, but for it to happen that fast was shocking, I would say. Washington had not been good for so long. Then last year he gets hurt and they kind of fall apart. You had to pick a side, plant a flag on Daniels right now because, and I'm choosing to be positive here because he was so outstanding as a rookie, and maybe he gets hurt again. He plays pretty recklessly, and that would crush the whole dream there, probably. Mariota got hurt too, by the way, in Washington, so he's almost definitely was slated to be their number 2 quarterback, and maybe he won't be now, depending on how long he's out. Like, if you get that Jaden Daniels, Washington can win a lot. And I think the vibes on Philadelphia are pretty bad. That's been true before, and they've won a lot also. And I think Dallas is really interesting in that division, but I always do. There's tons of talent there. I could see with, Dan mentioned, Quinnen Williams before, defensively, people like their draft picks, like they could be take a big step forward. So NFC East is a fun one to play around in if you want to come off the Eagles with either Dallas or Washington. Stephon Diggs now in Washington. It occurred to me last week that Bulldog and I didn't talk about that signing at all. It's like it's been too long now for us with Diggs. This is 3 teams ago, the Bills. Last year he had 1,000 yards for New England. Probably there's something left. I think probably also some of why he wasn't signed earlier. I mean, that could just be because he doesn't need to, but the off-the-field stuff with Diggs is a bit of a red flag. And so he doesn't sign until just, last week or a few days before with Washington. You've got McLaurin, you've got Diggs, you've got an interesting, kind of a confusing backfield set there. Washington, not real deep when it comes to skill guys. Antonio Williams is one of their rookie pass catchers this year. Interesting to hear Dan Leberfeld talk up the Jets' weapons. I don't know if I'd want to go that far as to do that. I think Wilson is tremendous. And after that, what have I got again? A.D. Mitchell? My guy with ADP chasing, Davis Maddock, loves A.D. Mitchell. But come on. I mean, this is a guy who was picked in the 2nd round, a player we talked about a lot because he's a wide receiver. We talk about them all, kind of. When he was entering the draft, Indianapolis makes that pick. That's the Coleman year, isn't it? When the Colts take Mitchell in that 2nd round. I might be off, but I think that's right.
That is Coleman's year.
Okay. Brian Thomas. I put Brian Thomas and Mitchell together, and that's that same. Brian Thomas is the 1st round, but that's that same, where they're on the same team. No, Brian Thomas is LSU.
Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell were the same team.
Xavier Worthy.
They're Texas.
And that's a different year, so now I'm getting all. But yes, so Indianapolis throws in A.D. Mitchell in the trade for Sauce Gardner. And really, like, I bet the success rate of players that are traded when they're so young is pretty bad. Just like, speaking of red flags, right? But, talented. Maybe their version of Coleman. Coleman gets the first touchdown in the new place here, by the way, on Saturday. A classic Josh Allen kind of play. But anyway, so Mitchell and the Jets. Wilson, sure, established, tremendous. The tight end he was talking about, Sadiq, hurt already. I guess the guy's like a freak athlete, but not everybody loved sort of his technique at Oregon. So I don't know how good it is. I want that to work. From a fantasy standpoint, I want the Jets to work offensively because with Geno Smith, like, there's a chance. I don't think Miami has this chance. I don't think even Tennessee has this chance. At least the Jets with Smith give you some possibility of, like, big numbers. Not huge. I just don't know who the rest of it's going to be. There's a rookie there. Is it Malachi Fields or is he Giants? I don't know. I'm getting my stuff mixed up today. We'll see about Breece Hall. If Breece Hall misses into the regular season, which seems possible, I mean, this is an injury, a groin injury with less than a month to go now. You've got Braylon Allen, you've got Isaiah Davis. Wonder if they would break that up. Dan seems really impressed with Allen, and he's one of these guys. Carolina has A.J. Dillon now, Quadzilla. You see him on Saturday on the depth chart for the Panthers. There's somebody, like, physically a sight to see. There's Braylon Allen, apparently, but it's only part of it. We'll talk to Sal coming up in about 20 minutes. Also, by the way, I'll just put this with the first coach fired. First coach fired, Dan Quinn, the new favorite. First quarterback benched. They have that as well. What a world where you have all these opportunities, all this to pick from, a smorgasbord of betting options. Tua Tagovailoa is the odds-on first quarterback benched. And there was a moment there on their sideline, Atlanta, in the first preseason weekend here. So I get that. It goes Tua, then Geno Smith, and then Kirk Cousins. And that would be one where I would look once I know he's going to start week 1 with the Raiders. Because, if he doesn't, then he's not going to be the first quarterback benched. If he does, Mendoza looked really good, apparently, in the Raiders opener, and I could see they should want to do that. The Raiders doing that fast, just based on Mendoza more than Cousins, perhaps. But one loss or two, I don't think the Falcons want to hurry Tua to the bench. I think they want to try that. And I think that's Geno Smith with the Jets, too. Like, they didn't do that to take him out. Cousins, it's more the other way around, where he's there to protect them from if Mendoza isn't ready to go. And he might be ready to go, but they still start Cousins, and then it'll be a pretty short-term thing. Again, Sal coming up at 5. I'm Mike Schopp. Thanks for listening. This is WGR. what they loved about him on tape, but just sort of it didn't really mean anything. The Jets weren't any good. Rodgers misses the year. He had the longest run of the NFL season that night against the Bills. Like 80, didn't score. Somehow he ran for like 85 yards on a play or somewhere around that and did not score. That was the longest rush of the season. When I think about him, it's not about that. I think about the draft when he and James Cook both came into the NFL. I'm just going to call this up here so I don't get my stuff wrong. Breece Hall. So he's going into his 5th year this year. 2022 draft, picked 36th overall. Early 2nd round. And Cook, can you hear me typing? Cook, the same draft, 63rd overall. Remember, the Bills traded down twice before drafting Cook, which, I love that stuff. And how'd that go? Not bad, right? Cook. When I think about Breece Hall, I think about the pre-draft period when, I'm certainly not alone in this, not even in this room when Bulldog is here, but no to high pick running backs. Just no. I don't want to debate it. I know I don't want to do it. Look at Arizona already. That's not fair. It's a training camp or a preseason injury. Maybe he'll be great. Genty last year. Genty for the Raiders, 1,300 some yards from scrimmage. They were awful. I just don't want to put my team's, most expensive draft capital, far from it, into a running back. I just think it's stupid. So I remember that year, 2022 this is, taking a call from a listener about Breece Hall. And the guy clearly knew who he was talking about. This was the Bills should draft Breece Hall guy. I think maybe the only one I've ever talked to that I knew was that, right? So he self-identified. I am here to tell you guys why I think the Bills should draft Breece Hall. Possibly you remember this because the conversation was pretty spicy and went on for a while. And, what I remember about it was the guy, like he had his stuff down. Like you guys should watch the tape. I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to watch the tape. There's no reason to watch the tape. I don't care. Compare him to Earl Campbell. Has the show ever sounded older? Compare him to LaDainian. I don't care. I don't want him because it's going to cost me a 1st-round pick. Who do the Bills take in that? Is that Elam, actually? Oh, that's funny. The Bills if the Bills had drafted Breece Hall instead of Kyer Elam, is the guy on the radio saying they'd be worse off? No, but just do not spend that kind of. Bisons are off as usual on a Monday. They have a homestand tomorrow through Sunday against Lehigh Valley. Only 3 homestands left. I guess that's still 18 games, or ish, give or take. But, mid-August. Sal coming up in about 12 minutes. His column, Arrow Up, Arrow Down, at the website, WGR Sports Radio 550. Mostly up, as you would expect if you watched that game. It's funny how he said they didn't punt, so that's a plus. It also counted as a minus, or a down versus an up, because you didn't get to see the punter punt. He was the holder, the new guy, as I scroll down to find that his name is Tommy Doman. Yes. Whew. Okay. What a run I'm on here. He was the holder, and the field goal that Bass missed, I thought I saw him basically like set up for a certain spot and then back up like a yard and then set up for a certain spot and then back up another yard. Like, I don't know, that was a weird one for me because unless there was some confusion over where the ball was being spotted, you just know like -7, right? Just 7 yards from the line of scrimmage, or maybe 7.5, or whatever. Teams might even vary a little bit at that. But there shouldn't really be any confusion over where to line up as the holder on a given play. But, maybe, again, I couldn't see what was happening with the ball in the line of scrimmage on that. The camera was just on him and on Bass. Bass does miss one, that one, 2 for 3 in the game. Washington, I was talking about them a few minutes ago, they cut their kicker today, Moody. So with kickers, Bass has, I should look again, like he got a contract, but teams don't always mess around when it comes to that. The standard is so high now, and even a couple of misses in the preseason can be it. Just looking at I'm talking again about this guy from Green Bay that I watched on Thursday or Friday night with the Packers played in Pittsburgh, and just looked as effortless as it ever looks for a kicker. And, on grass as well, by the way, Trey Smack is his name. The name helps. Just sort of popping him through from 50-plus yards. He had one from 58 that they called back because Pittsburgh had a penalty on the play. Green Bay decided to keep the ball. So that one didn't even count. But, man, I think we know. I mean, guys who can make them from 60-plus, Little in Jacksonville for one, you kind of need to be, easier said than done, but you want to be on the kind of level where if you're not, and Bass has made a 60-yard field goal, so that's not really the issue with him. But misses, it doesn't feel like these days the league will put up with a lot anymore. It's just too easy to make field goals these days. Sal Capaccio next on WGR.
The Buffalo Bills got their preseason started over the weekend, a 29-14 victory over the Carolina Panthers. And next up, it is going to be a trip to Cleveland to take on the Browns this Saturday at 1 p.m. For practice this week, no media at today's practice. The Bills also later on this week will be in Cleveland for a number of joint practices. And for today, the team did announce a small roster move, signing linebacker Otis Reese IV and releasing fullback Jackson Aker. For more on the game, Sal Capaccio has a piece up at our website, WGR550.com. And do stay tuned, as Sal's going to be joining the show next. Around the rest of the league, former Bills linebacker Von Miller has found a new home. It was reported over the weekend. It was made official today. He is signing with the Cowboys on a one-year deal worth $5.5 million. And Jets running back Breece Hall, he suffered a groin strain at practice today. According to head coach Aaron Glenn, though Glenn did say with the media afterwards that he does not believe it is a big deal. In college football, the AP preseason poll was released this afternoon. Ohio State comes in at number 1, while reigning national champs Indiana slot in at 6. Then in baseball, off days for the Yankees, Blue Jays, and Bisons. All three will get back at it tomorrow. But for tonight, the Mets, they are hosting the Padres at 7:10. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet with you for the extra mile since 1935. I'm Zach Jones for Western New York's Voice of the Fan, WGR.
All right, welcome back to Sal. We had Paul Hamilton pop in a couple of times last week as he was out on the Bills beat with Sal away in Cooperstown, coaching and watching baseball. I mean, that place, you're immersed in it in Cooperstown, and it looked like you loved it.
It was the greatest youth sports experience I've ever had, to be honest with you. And it's not actually in Cooperstown, it's in Oneonta, but they call it Cooperstown, obviously. They're close by, and we did go to Cooperstown for a day, to visit the Hall of Fame, the team essentially. But yeah, it was unbelievable. 12 fields, all turf fields. You talked about on here, and when you've gone away for your son's lacrosse, and like the one time a couple of weeks ago, when it was just this massive sea of humanity for hours and hours. That's what it is in this complex for baseball. And it was 6 days of that. We played a game at 11 p.m., and it was amazing. And it was great. And then we had to get up and play a game at 9 a.m. the next morning. So, yeah, and I would go back right now and stay 5 more days in the barracks with the kids. That's how much fun I had and miss it.
I don't know if I could handle 6 days of that. I think, those lacrosse weekends, that one you referenced in Delaware was pretty crazy. It's just like logistically, that one.
Yeah.
And I would think that this place would have that stuff mostly right.
It was very well organized. It was, but they do this every week. They go through like 94 teams, or I think every week, 94 teams, 94, and it was pretty amazing, and we had a great time. So yeah, I'm really happy we did it. It was a lot of fundraising and money, but an incredible experience.
Well, you get a couple days back, and then it's off to Cleveland this week, and we'll talk about that later on in the conversation. I'm always curious, Sal, for people's first impressions of the stadium. Now, that wouldn't have been your first impression, but it's the first game there. What were a couple of your thoughts about how it went?
Yeah, I thought the game presentation was great, from a standpoint of it's a little different than what you get in the open practice, obviously. A couple weeks ago, the return of the blue and red. A lot of the elements you get from the other stadium and the shout song and things like that, but how would that resonate with people? How would it look? Those kinds of things that I was thinking about. But maybe more so for the game on Saturday, Mike, was me thinking about some of the complaints that came out of last week and how maybe things would be perceived and, what kind of reaction we get this time. Is there more that's coming? And to be honest with you, I really felt like there was much more of a conscious effort from people to say how good of an experience they had, maybe because there was that, negativity that was out there from some people. And sure, if you have a obstructed seat and you have a legitimate complaint, it should be addressed. And it sounds like the Bills are, I think, addressing some of those specifically. But it felt like a lot of people wanted to make sure they, showed and said that they had a great experience. The grass, very interesting. I think it was chewed up a little bit by the end. I'm not somebody who's, I'm not a horticulturalist. I don't know if that's the right word for this. I know that's plants, but I would think that because it's the first time playing on the grass, maybe that has something to do with it. And it, hasn't been, kind of beaten up a little bit, so to speak. But you could see afterwards they were, filling the divots and things like that. The stadium itself was perfect weather. It was a great day in Orchard Park. I thought the parking was pretty smooth for me when I went in, but I went very early in the day. I had no issues getting in, so I'm not sure how it worked for everybody, but I thought logistically everything went pretty well.
The field will be an interesting one to monitor. Now you have to know this stuff, Sal, because we have grass now. So this is a new area that we need to be experts on. Like, that'll be a story. It was Tim Graham reported earlier in the day that there were complaints, like that the field was chewed up a little bit before the game even started. Then you had that one, I think it was a Kyle Allen slide by the sideline, and a big chunk of the field came up. I mean, that's going to happen sometimes, but I wonder if that was like a surprise or even a shock to those that helped put this thing up, the stadium.
Yeah, I agree. But I also will say that when DJ Moore got twisted up a bit and he had to get looked at, I saw a few people online saying, if this was turf, maybe it results more negatively because there wasn't much give. There wouldn't be much give on the turf, but there was more on the grass. So, I don't know. I mean, that's speculation, right? But all of these things are a little bit different now to kind of think about and wonder about as we go forward here. I thought the stadium looked really good. It seemed like it was loud. That's the other thing, Mike. It was loud. It was really loud for a preseason game.
Okay.
And, we've talked a lot about the pitch of the stadium, how people are right on top of you, and how that's going to benefit, keeping the noise in. And this was just a preseason game, obviously, but I could feel it. I could hear it. And one of the differences is if you go to a game and sit in the press box at all, at old Highmark Stadium, like most stadiums who are outdoors, everything's glassed in. It is here, but they have windows that actually open in the press box, and we could hear what was happening, like in the stadium, which is not usual and normal for these types of stadiums.
Did you get the sense, or even did you notice people walking around a lot? A couple times I peeked in at the game, and there were a lot of empty seats. I think if I had been there, I would have wanted to do that. It's just sort of experience the place for the first time, not be glued to my seat for a preseason game necessarily.
Yeah, actually, it's funny you bring that up. Paul was sitting next to me in the press box, and he said, boy, a lot of people left. It was like the start of the half. And I said, Paul, I don't think they left. I think they're walking around and, enjoying the stadium for the first time. Like, they got into their seats to watch Josh Allen, and now he's out. You go to the second half, and you're like, hey, I want to go meet my buddy who's over in another section, and I can do that. I can still watch the game, and I want to see what this stadium's about. I thought for most of the second half, and I actually went down into that area for a little while to kind of walk around. I had not been in the bowels of the stadium yet because, in the old one, you have one tunnel in, one tunnel out. This one, it's like a lot of the newer stadiums now where you have 4 different entry points and you can walk the circumference. I did that because I hadn't done it yet. And as I did that, I would go and I'd just kind of stand in the tunnel and look out. And then when I went back up in the corridor area, I guess the concourse area, you could see that there were definitely people hanging out, taking selfies, taking pictures, and I think that was the case, yes.
Mm-hmm. That'll be interesting to see going forward. You and I didn't talk last week after the practice, but I think, for a preseason game, that's a perfect idea. I do not expect, if I'm the same fan in there for Detroit in week 2, to be walking around. Like, now, it's a completely different dynamic when the regular season starts. I guess if the team were bad or late in the season when games are not as vitally important, sure. Maybe I'll go meet my friends, like you said. But really, that changes come the regular season.
Yeah, I would say this, though, Mike. That is true. But, I mean, I've been in enough games now, covering the NFL, that it is a lot less busy to start the second half, seat-wise, people sitting in their seats, than it is to start the game because people are at the concessions or at the bathrooms or in the lines. They're not really realizing when the game is starting yet. They are catching up with somebody. It's not necessarily intentional, but you're like, oh, I better get back to my seat, which, by the way, is one of the reasons why teams do defer the opening kickoff. You're getting the ball, if you're on the road especially. If you're on the road and you're getting the ball in the second half, it's a little bit easier to hear, to be quite honest with you.
Because the seats aren't filled.
Correct.
Ask the Leafs about starting periods and what the crowd looks like with everybody out in the concourse. Sal Capaccio on the West Shore Hotline. I'm Mike Schopp. Bulldog is off this week. So how about Allen here in this game, Sal? I mean, you said it in your write-up. There were some close calls with him, and he's taken hundreds of hits, and the Bills have been lucky that he's made it through all of that so far in his career, the longest consecutive game streak of starts for any quarterback in the league. But still, like in the preseason, every time it was even close, and he did get hit a couple times, I think, you'd sort of, wow, do we really need to do this? But he got through it.
Yeah, too close for comfort for my liking. I would rather not see the starters out there at all. From Joe Brady's perspective, I do understand why, though, which is, and Josh, I asked Josh about this after the game, which is how important is it to get a feel for where the play clock is and the game clock is and the sight lines into this to the sidelines and finding your coaches, know where you are. And he said, yeah, it's a new stadium. Any stadium you go to, you do that. And this is, you don't want to do that the first time you play in this one. So they want to get them acclimated there. And of course they want to get a little chemistry between him and DJ Moore. But I think that was a big part of it. Like they wanted to get acclimated, as I said, to this stadium, and they started Josh Allen. And, I thought a couple of times there, you're kind of holding your breath like, okay, like that was a little too close. Is he okay? And you'd rather not see that. I mean, he got grabbed, he got pulled, he got hit, he got taken down. I mean, Jalen Phillips is right there, and he's a guy that Josh is familiar with playing against the Miami Dolphins. And I didn't like seeing it. I understand why he played from Joe Brady's perspective, but from here on out, I mean, I would much rather just see Josh Allen and the rest of the starters pretty much, with baseball caps on the sidelines and an earpiece in and, seeing what's going on.
That Jalen Phillips one was just long enough for me to think, he could just throw him down. Like this could be one. There's a history, and what's a penalty worth in a preseason game? Like he might have had an instinct to do that, and he let up after the ball was released, at least. But I had just enough time there to think something could happen here, and Phillips let him off easy.
Yeah, and when he got taken down one time, he got sacked twice, but one didn't count because it was a penalty. And the penalty was because he got his face mask grabbed. And that's another one. Like all those little things, you're getting pulled on, and all it takes is, you talked about the grass, anything, like just one little tweak, and now we're dealing with, is he going to play against Houston? And let's remember, that's a team, Houston, week 1, a place where he's been beaten up, including last year. So you'd like to see Josh Allen healthy, and I think the only way to guarantee that is him not playing. But we'll see. We haven't heard from Joe Brady yet this week. We'll see what he says about how much the starters will play this week in Cleveland. They have the joint practice on Thursday. They have the game on Saturday.
Allen did his thing on that penalty sack, for lack of a better term, where he called the penalty for the official before the play was even over, which
it's fallen to the ground.
I
happened
hate
to
that.
his face mask.
I hate that. Like, if I'm an official, you know what, buddy? I know you're Josh Allen, but I'll do my job, okay? And that wasn't like the real referee. Do you know anything about this? Like, it was said on the broadcast that the actual referee was not on the field. Were they just trying something?
I know in the past, I don't know if this was the case in this specific game. It was the side judge who was the referee, a side judge, I should say, who was a referee. And in the past, in preseason games, the NFL has had side judges or line judges referee games because they want to get them experience in case they have to step into a situation.
Okay. They get the wheel for a quarter or something like that.
Yeah.
Very good. So this week is this joint practice with the Browns that starts, is it Thursday and Friday? Wednesday is the travel day?
No, they're only practicing Thursday.
Just Thursday. Okay. These things can get pretty testy. They don't always, but you have not only the decision on starters in the game, but even, they're going to practice, I assume. There's going to be, that's really where, maybe you've maybe said this before, that these practices tend to somewhat take the place of the game.
Yeah, and I think they did that a lot last year in Chicago, to be honest with you. The Bills and Bears last year, like their starters went against each other for quite a bit in the joint practice, and that was, really a good amount of reps to kind of get under their belt as opposed to a preseason game. And if you're doing it that way, you can actually put red jerseys on the quarterback. You can control, it's a controlled scrimmage environment, basically. So I'd prefer that, and I think it's great work. I'm all for that. You go out there and let's have DJ Moore go against their top corner. Let's see what that looks like. Have him do it a few times. They do special teams drills and gunners against, double teams. And, it does get physical. There's no doubt about it. And it gets testy, as you said. Guys are trying to make the team on both sides. It's a chance for a couple hours to hit somebody on another team and not your own players, and to be rooting for your players hitting the other team. And so I would be all for that. And we've seen that happen before where You go to these practices, and teams really take the time to make sure they're getting their starters the reps because they're not going to play them in the preseason game. Now, a couple of years ago, the Bills went to Pittsburgh, and they actually were going to play Josh Allen in the preseason. But remember, the rain came, and then they didn't want him on the wet field. That was after he had played in the joint practice the day before, a couple of days before. So you never know how these teams are going to do it. I like these joint practices too because, Mike, you can put your team in situations like red zone, goal line. Like, it gives you good work. You have a red zone period. You have a 2-minute period. You're not guaranteed to get that. Scrimmages, controlled scrimmages for that very reason. Like, hey, let's come up with a plan where we can work on things we need to work on against a live opponent, and both teams are on the same page. As far as it getting testy, I've talked with coaches and GMs about this before, and, basically they all say the same thing, which is neither side wants that to happen from an organizational standpoint. You try to have it against teams and coaches that you respect, and they're going to send the same message to their players. You can't guarantee that players aren't going to get into it and then things start to happen.
2 first-time NFL head coaches in their first seasons, Joe Brady and then Todd Monken is now the head coach of the Browns. DJ Moore, Sal, you've been impressed, and he had a couple of moments there on Saturday. The one was just kind of wild where he's, pointing at the DB. Come on, come challenge me. You did see him limp there. It didn't look like a great ending to the one play. And I know there was no access today. Do you think or do you know that he's fine, or is that something that will come up tomorrow?
We don't know for sure. My best guess, just based on how everything played out afterwards, is there shouldn't be too much to worry about, and that is only because he was getting looked at by athletic trainers on the sidelines. Josh actually came over, sat down next to him. He was listening in on those conversations. And then the trainers vacated him, and then he got up and he walked over to his teammates and stood on the sidelines the rest of the game. So if there was anything that's really concerning, you're generally going to go maybe into the locker room for sure, but at least into the medical tent, I would say. That never even happened. So I would say things would look good from that front, but you never know until you get a couple of days in. I mean, we may get out there tomorrow and he's not practicing, and then we wonder what's happening. We won't hear from Joe Brady tomorrow. We'll only hear from Jim Leonard tomorrow morning. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to get any update on him, but we will see if he's at practice tomorrow. 3 catches for 61 yards and very limited work. I mean, that's a full game for most wide receivers in the NFL. And he did it in a couple of series to start the game. It was asked by Matt Bove after to Josh Allen if there was a conscious effort to make sure that they got DJ Moore involved early in the game, and Josh's response was, what he said was, I'm going to assume it's going to be important to get involved early in all games. Like, basically, yeah, it was, and we're going to do that every game. And then he said, and I said this to you guys, it'll make defenses adjust. And that's right, because there's only a handful of receivers that, defensive coordinators totally game plan for. We got to double team him. We got to roll coverage. We got to know where he is at all times. I don't think DJ Moore's in that bucket, but what you can do with DJ Moore is you feed him early and you make a defensive coordinator have to adjust his game plan, and that's what Josh was basically saying.
How about Deion Walker in this one, Sal? He made your article.
The Bills have not had the star power that some of the teams that they've been fighting with in the AFC over the last several years have had, like Cincinnati or Kansas City or Baltimore, like star players, especially star players that they drafted. Brandon Beane, to me, has done a very good job of drafting on the floor, meaning guys who are 5th, 6th, 7th round picks who have become good football players. They've contributed. They've had good careers. They've been guys you can count on, rely on. But where it's been missing with the Bills in his tenure is the top of the line players, the guys who are the all-pros. Yes, you have Josh Allen. Of course, you've had a few along the way. That's been the criticism. I think Deion Walker might be one of those guys. Not only is he a middle-round pick, Deion Walker could wind up being one of the top defensive linemen, interior defensive linemen in the AFC. That's how good I think he can be. And after last year's rookie, he was first team all-pro, all-rookie last year. Let's remember that. That's high praise. He goes out there. He was dominant. He was dominant against the Panthers' first-team offense. And I just think that really this guy can be a total disruptive force that could really help the defense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned about last year, too, because it slips my mind sometimes. Like, he played in every game for them last year. And coming into the draft, I think about him more for this than how he played. It's just sort of a guy that everybody kind of agreed had a ton of talent, but ended up slipping into the 4th round as it happened in the 25 draft, so last year. So, yeah, I can see why you'd say there's a pretty high upside there. And he's so big. So you watch the game on Saturday, I mean, 6'7", 325 maybe in that sort of district.
And Mike, he lost like 10 to 15 pounds this offseason intentionally. And he had said his goal was to do that. And the reason was he wanted to be more, he wanted to have more stamina. He wanted to feel like he was able to kind of withstand the rigors of a full season through 4 quarters, 17 games, playoffs. And I understand that. When you're a rookie, you come in the league, you don't understand what kind of a grind it is. You hit a rookie wall, so to speak. I'm not saying he did, but obviously he felt like he needed a little bit more in that area. And, so far so good. He already moves really well for a big man. Shedding a little bit of weight is only going to help that.
One more for you, Sal. I think I'll have time for maybe just one. Tyler Bass, 2 for 3 on the grass. So how secure is he? I know mostly we've been talking about his injury status before Saturday came around, but no question about that once we got there. No other kicker on the roster here, as we've discussed. Just thinking about how I don't want to put it this way again, but how easy field goals are anymore. Just how, from distance too, and what kind of standard any kicker might have to achieve to be kind of like safe. And I wonder where you think Bass falls on that scale.
Well, I think he needs to make a 44-yarder, and he missed that one. That's one you have to make. That's just outside of extra point range, to be honest with you, right? After the game, he said he rushed it a little bit. I also think that maybe Tommy Doman had maybe been a little bit late on, getting it down or getting set. So, that's a new operation, right? He's got a new holder there this year. So there's some circumstances, no doubt. And I'm sure that Jeff Rogers, the special teams coach, will take all of that into consideration because he was very good on all the other kicks that he made. And, you want to see that. Now, I would say that if, from a fan standpoint, if Tyler Bass misses that kick, it's late, and he makes 5 in a row, then misses that one, I don't think it's as big of a story. Because you're like, oh, yeah, he was really good, and then he missed the one at the end. But he missed it early, and that became a story right away, and I understand that, and it's totally fair. Security, he's probably pretty secure right now. He's the only kicker on the roster. He goes over to Cleveland next week and he misses another one, then maybe you start to ask a couple of questions and see. But I think that they feel very comfortable with him. They've shown a lot of faith in him up to this point. They don't have another kicker on the roster. So until I kind of see something like that, I have to believe that he's pretty darn secure.
Recent years, it's really been somewhat of a musical chairs deal with kickers around the NFL. I mean, hasn't taken much for guys to come free. Washington released its kicker today. I mean, I don't know if he missed one in their game or something, but they did that. So teams are pretty short trigger when it comes to kickers generally.
The other thing I'll mention, Mike, about that, though, it's not just kicking. I thought he was good on his kickoffs. Putting it in the landing zone. And I think maybe 1 or 2 weren't maybe all the way to the goal line or where you want it between the 5 and the goal line. But I was watching for that. How does that look? And, so it seems like that went pretty well. And that's got to be part of the equation now with the new rules.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned just quickly on the one miss, I thought I noticed on TV that the holder, Doman, twice backed up when he was setting up. He was maybe 2 yards ahead, and then 2 times he had to sort of get back up from his position and move back to spot the ball. So I don't know what was going on there, because that should be pretty easy math, but maybe there was confusion about where the ball was spotted or something, and he wasn't sure what to do. Okay. Love to have landing zone back. I forgot about some things. The game goes away from your mind. You sort of take the spring and summer. We're talking about it, but we're not seeing it. And then there it is. They line up, and there's that landing zone. Bam. Got to get used to that again. All right. Great day out there Saturday. Thanks for your time today, and glad to have you back.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Talk to you later.
Sal Capaccio on the West Her Hotline. His appearances on WGR brought to you by Outlet Liquor, your place, the place to buy a case. OutletLiquor.com. What's your outlet? Oh, landing zones, some space ref. I mean, we love it. We love it. But, it's not perfect. I get the lane. I don't know what I'm saying with the kickoff thing. The kickoff thing works. Just, you sit down to a new season, and you don't necessarily remember that that's what that's going to look like, where there's the kicker on the screen and no one else is in the shot because they're all back there. And I guess there was some tweak to those rules about how many guys can stand farther back or something. They did a little bit to that. I'll have to refresh my memory or come to learn about it for the first time. That's what we'll call it. 803-0550. Were you there Saturday? Just how amazing was it? Was it even maybe not great in certain ways? We had that last week with the obstructed view seats. I'm not trying to, set you up for a certain take. I just am always hoping to hear from more fans who, like most of us, appreciating the significance of it all, what you thought actually sitting down for a game. Bulldog is off this week. I'm Mike Schopp. To your calls after sports. This is WGR.
It's a good start to the preseason for the Buffalo Bills as they take down the Carolina Panthers 29-14 over the weekend. Next up, it is a trip to Cleveland to take on the Browns on Saturday at 1 p.m. The Bills are still in Buffalo, though no media at practice today, but a little bit later on this week, they'll get to Cleveland a little bit earlier, having some joint practices with the Browns later this week. The Bills did announce some smaller roster moves, though, today, signing linebacker Otis Reese the fourth, and to do so have released fullback Jackson Aker. And for more on the game and those signings, Sal Capaccio has a piece up at our website, WGR550.com. Some injury news around the league. Jets running back Breece Hall, he suffered a groin strain at practice today. According, though, to head coach Aaron Glenn, it is said to not be believed a big deal. In college football, the AP preseason poll was released this afternoon. Ohio State comes in at number 1. The reigning national champions, though, Indiana, slot in a few spots below them at 6. And in baseball, off days for the Yankees, Blue Jays, and Bisons. They'll all get back at it tomorrow. Tonight, though, we have the Mets in action. They're hosting the Padres. That one at 7:10. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet with you for the extra mile since 1935. I'm Zach Jones for Western New York's Voice of the Fan, WGR.
The defense respects that dude. They play off of that guy. They don't want to tackle him. They don't want to cover him. Did you see the smile on Josh Allen's face when he gets asked questions about DJ Moore? He's like, yeah, this is the guy. I want to get it to him early and often. Like, he's a weapon. He's a problem for people. They're going to be a really, really fun offense. I think DJ Moore is going to be great for Josh Allen. It's such a good thing for the Bills. In a weird way, this could be a win-win situation for the Bears and the Bills. But if I had to give the win to somebody, I like this for the Bills a lot.
Matt Hasselbeck. Okay. Certainly a couple highlights on Saturday from DJ Moore. 2 years ago with Chicago. I could make it 3, because 3 years ago is his career high in yards. 1,364 yards. So 80 yards a game. Played them all. The guy hasn't missed a game in more than 5 years. DJ Moore. And it looked a little iffy there for a minute on Saturday, but, talking to Sal, maybe there's nothing to worry about. We'll find out perhaps more tomorrow. 96, 1,364, and 8. That's Justin Fields' Bears in 2023. Then the next year, 98 catches, 2 more. Just under 1,000 yards, 966, and then 6 touchdowns, his lowest ever yards per reception season. He's much more of a downfield target option for his Carolina teams. Brady was there for part of that, and then that one Bears year. And then last year, just a nosedive. Same games played, but 55 fewer targets, 48 fewer catches, and hundreds fewer yards, 682, the same 6 touchdowns for the season. I mean, I know, and he had a rushing touchdown, by the way, last year. Don't want to leave that out. I know how the Bills see it. The Bills see it just like Matt Hasselbeck sounds like he sees it. Wheels up. And maybe he'll be right. Maybe they'll be right. The other side of the argument is that this huge drop-off last year for DJ Moore was because of DJ Moore, that it wasn't just circumstances. It often isn't. It's a player, I think of this more for tight ends, but a player is largely responsible for his own targets. A quarterback, a competent quarterback is not going to hide from you if you get open all the time. They're going to find you. And that did not happen with Caleb Williams and DJ Moore last year, at least on the same level that it had happened before in Moore's career, even with Williams the year before. So he's either really good still, as he's been for most of his career, if not all of it, and young enough to put up a great season on a team with the best quarterback he's ever had, maybe by far. Williams was good, but, Williams was the best quarterback I think he'd ever had before, he showed up. So it's either that or the critics were right in being concerned about what Moore has left after 8 seasons in the league, in which time he almost, again, has never missed a game. Like, he has played not a lot of playoff games, but, 8 hard, full years so far. And, maybe it's down the middle. If it's down the middle, I think you get a year like Moore had 2 years ago. I don't see any, maybe, I guess I shouldn't rule it out, but I don't see any 1,300-plus yard season happening here. Something that gets him, what would that be, top 5 or 6 in the NFL? I wouldn't expect that. I don't think the circumstances, the situation is exactly right for that. Where, like, that Bears team, as impressive as this is for that team with Fields at quarterback, just not really going anywhere. And they were not flush with options at receiver. They changed that in the last 2 years since, with Burden and with Loveland and Odunze, of course, with the Bears. Like, they've really overhauled it. And the quarterback is different. So you get a stat line between that career year in yards and touchdowns, and then last year you split the difference. Then you're looking at 75 catches for, wow, what a difference. I mean, it's like double the yards from last year to 2023. 1,000, say, not to put too fine a point on it. 75 for 1,000, and I guess it would be 7 touchdowns. Like, I think you take it. That's 4 to 5 receptions a week. I think that kind of number, that doesn't sound as exciting as, doubling that would. But that kind of number, I think, fits with what the Bills have been on offense. I think their hope is that, not that they want to reinvent anything, but that they have a separator and, speed and the package, the skill set that you have with this player, and they can benefit accordingly. Not feeding him all the time, not reinventing, but getting more out of his targets, his usage, than they've gotten out of whoever you want to use for this. Mac Hollins, whoever you want to use for this in the last couple of years. So I think that's a win. To evaluate the trade, as Matt Hasselbeck started to do, to compare, you can't leave out what the Bears got. Like, it's just not a player. It's a second-round draft pick. Like, you have to remember that. That's part of, they didn't just give the Bills DJ Moore. I do think enough people have said it, not that we really know this. I don't know anybody that knows this, but like I said at the time of the trade, it did seem like there was a fair chance the Bears were going to release him. That's why Hasselbeck says, that they both kind of win the trade, which is really saying what from Chicago's standpoint? He didn't reference the draft pick. He would know that there is that. It's that, maybe too many cooks or chefs or whatever you want there for the too many Bears, just needing or wanting to kind of move forward with the other guys and invest somewhere else on the roster and get younger, which they were able to do all of that with that trade. Man, the fantasy sickos out here are just gaga for Burden. And I'm in the echo chamber. He's a 4th-round pick, sometimes not even that, sometimes even the 3rd. But mid to late 4th, I can't help myself. Feel like this guy takes some of what DJ Moore was giving the Bears. Second year, really came on late last year. I put him on a higher level than Odunze. Just, not like I'm crushing film or anything like that, but I hear a lot more excitement about Burden than I do about Odunze, who goes a couple rounds later. And then there's Colston Loveland, the tight end, who I think is in another great spot, and I'm thrilled to draft him too when I can. I think the Bills still, what holds me back on Moore in that context is his age, and also just that they have built this thing. I'm not hearing everybody eats anymore, and I'm relieved. But they have built this around that kind of concept, and they've been successful. So why would they scrap it? One theory would be that Joe Brady never really, that McDermott kind of dictated that. I just don't really think so. When Brady took over from Ken Dorsey in the middle of that season 3 years ago now, they went right to the running game, and they basically ignored Diggs. Just like that. They basically that was a reinvention. We're going to run the ball and win that way. And they did. They won a lot. They just lost in the playoffs again, because that's what always happens. But they were not unsuccessful, and that is what led me to think the next year, so this is now 2024, I guess, why would they not do the same thing? And they did the same thing. And then you had Cook and his 16 rushing touchdowns. And then there was this question last year again. But, receiving talent and whatever about their offense that raised questions. Yep, they're going to want to play the same way. And they play the same way. And then Cook leads the league in rushing. So I think that's the recipe that they have really thrived with. And I just would be surprised if they wanted to mess with that. And I think this lines up. This is to the Bills' credit. I mean, their timing of this all, because it lines up with the trends in the league going the same way. How defenses play the top quarterbacks, the size of their defensive players. I mean, there have been certain trends that show you how teams are more willing to run the ball now because lighter boxes, as they say, and this kind of thing. And I could see actually Kansas City shifting to that this year. I don't think you sign Kenneth Walker without some intention of doing that. Mahomes off the injury, and they still don't have that great of a wide receiver room anyway. Like, they didn't really fix that. What did they do? They've got a rookie they like. They always do. Cyrus Allen is his name. But it's Rice and it's Worthy. And, of course, it's Kelsey. Yeah, I think Walker was their move. And I think, I'm not sure I want to say they're going to copy the Bills, but I think, and, Kansas City with Mahomes, as good as he is, always has these kind of relative no-names that pop up. And the Bills have had some of that too. So I think you're seeing what Buffalo did successfully, that they'll try to, have continue the way they play. And other teams, maybe Kansas City would be the latest and the biggest name for this, coming around to that. I think Walker is a great fantasy pick because I'm expecting Kansas City to shift in this way. I'm Mike Schopp. Thanks for listening. Bulldog is off this week. More after this here on WGR. It's the return of football ads. I refuse to believe that Jason Kelsey's wife has no idea what the Sunday Ticket is. I just refuse to. There's one where right before he walks into the living room with a giant sub, she's like, but they're coming in from L.A. They're going to want to watch L.A. Okay, listen. I'm going to say this once. This is all the games. Oh, okay. No problem. But what about my cousin from Nashville? No. I just said it. There's nothing to worry about. Okay. Sorry. I'm tough with ads, right? I mean, it's got to be at least semi-believable. It can be funny and not really that realistic, but I just refuse to believe that she wouldn't know. Hasn't she she go to all his games? Or has she maybe, like, sometimes had to watch them from somewhere? How does that work? Well, you see, there's this thing where it's been around for like 20 years, maybe longer, where it's all the games. Oh, you learned that once, I think. Can we afford? Yes, honey, we can afford the Sunday Ticket. I mean, right? We know that we can afford it. It's okay. I am thinking about getting it. I used to have a great hookup where I could get it for free, but in a lot of those years, we were in here because the Bills only played Sundays at 1, and I never really got that much value. Well, not never, but often didn't get that much value out of it. But I have been going through and like counting this year. It's basically half of NFL Sundays the Bills won't play, or they'll play late. I mean, a couple of 425s on here. One I'll be at in Las Vegas, so I'm not going to need Sunday Ticket for that. Or this microphone, actually. But Thursday night, Monday night, Thanksgiving night, Sunday night, Green Bay, Saturday night, Chicago, Christmas with Denver. Yeah, I mean, those are all Sunday Ticket opportunities, so to speak. And I mean, it's not cheap. But I have the luxury, quote, luxury, of never having subscribed to YouTube TV before. So I would get like a better price, right? If you're new, once you do it, like all these betting sites, once you sign up once, these offers you're just constantly bombarded with do not apply to you because you've already made an account. It's first-time users only. So with Sunday Ticket, I think I'd save like, I don't know, somewhere around 30%. So maybe, I mean, I will watch it usually if I have it and the Bills are off, rather than settle for the 1 or 2 games that are sitting there in the first place, or Red Zone. I just don't really like Red Zone. I'm so like concentrated on everything that's happening around the league. That means like this computer I use here, and then a phone will have a different app. And I don't know why I need both, probably just a different fantasy site or something. And that tells me anytime like the big play, whatever, I'm getting basically play-by-play of every game as it happens right here. And with Red Zone, that's always going to be late. And, you know, if it says Lamar Jackson 75-yard touchdown to Zay Flowers, or literally any play like that around the NFL, then I want to see it. And Red Zone's going to get me there, but not for another little bit. So I don't know. Red Zone, the guy comes at you so hard, and it's like, I don't know, the energy of it all, and the manic movement and the pace of it. It's a little much. I like to think I'm better at Red Zone than Red Zone, not because I'm commentating for anybody. Can you imagine? In my house, like just I'm basically doing Red Zone. No, just because like I want to pick my own game based on, I don't know, a fantasy element of a player of mine, or something about the situation. Like, I don't want to be just sort of kind of stuck with that. Red Zone, we do get, whatever I subscribe to includes it. So that should be into the calculus too when it comes to Sunday Ticket, because at least I'm getting all the big plays. And I'm not getting really commercials. They did add a little bit of that last year, right? They added just a few spots during Red Zone. That's not going to go the other way at any point. So anyway, now you know. I just, please next time somebody tell Jason Kelsey's wife what it is, so she doesn't lose her mind about how her relatives are not going to be able to see the game they want. And was there only one TV in that ad, by the way? Somebody still has to flip around. I'm a one TV guy. I mean, I don't have that kind of like a basement set up with different screens that you might consider optimal. Dan Leberfeld on the Jets. He was with me earlier. That's next here on WGR.